Hey everybody, today we're debating Israel versus Palestine. Who is more at fault? And we are starting right now with Javad's opening statement. Thanks for being with us. Javad, the floor is all yours, Dr. Hashmi.
All right, thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen. So if you could just give me 1 second to set that up. All right, you should be able to see my PowerPoint now. All right, I'm going to begin. So my overall thesis is quite simple. Zionism is the primary cause of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict because it is an ongoing settler colonial project, which by its very nature creates and perpetuates conflict with the indigenous population that it seeks to violently replace and to create in its stead a Europeanized Jewish majority ethno-nationalist state. The Zionist project is analogous to other settler colonial projects, such as the European conquest of Native American lands and of South Africa, which involved ethnic cleansing, occupation, genocide, politicide, and apartheid. Stephen doesn't like to call it settler colonialism and confuses the term with imperialism and classical colonialism, but settler colonialism is a technical term used by experts in the field, and it's only within this framework of settler colonialism that you can truly understand the conflict. Stephen doesn't like the word because it gives the game away. No reasonable person today blames the Native Americans for what happened to them, and 100 years from now, the same will be the case for the Palestinians. Under settler colonialism, native populations are subjected to ethnic cleansing, another term that Stephen doesn't like, so he denies and downplays it. But the reality is that you can't establish a Jewish majority ethno-nationalist state in Palestine when the population is overwhelmingly Arab. The only way to create a super majority of Jews, which is what Zionists demanded, is to ethnically cleanse the indigenous population, or what Zionists euphemistically refer to as transfer, which, contrary to Destiny's past claims, was overwhelmingly endorsed by the Zionist leadership. Israel was thus created in sin, born in an act of massive ethnic cleansing, the Nakba, which resulted in 700,000 refugees and involved the destruction of over 500 Palestinian villages. 90% of Palestinians in Israel proper were thereby eliminated, creating the supermajority of Jews, without which the Jewish state of Israel could not have come into existence. Israel is a supremacist ethnocracy in which the state apparatus is controlled by Israeli Jews, who use it to further their own interests, power, dominance, and resources over and above the Arab minority. Consistent with Zionist propaganda, Stevens stresses that Israel is a democracy and makes the absolutely fallacious claim that the so-called Arab Israelis have equal rights under the law, employing the same arguments as defenders of apartheid South Africa, who claimed that South African blacks had a higher standard of living than surrounding states. As numerous human rights groups attest to, such as Amnesty, Human Rights Watch, and Israel's own B'Tselem, Israel as it exists today is an apartheid state. Of course, this is yet another word that Stephen does not like because, again, it gives the game away. Nobody today would be on the side of apartheid South Africa. The next term Stephen definitely won't like is politicide, which is what Israel has been doing since the first Nakba all the way to today's second Nakba in Gaza. The Zionist version of Manifest Destiny, Eretz Israel and Greater Israel, precludes the acceptance of a sovereign Palestinian state, something rejected by every single Israeli prime minister and administration throughout Israel's 76-year history. Instead, the goal is to herd the Palestinians into smaller and smaller reservations, as was done to the Native Americans or to the blacks in South Africa, to create autonomous Bantustans. As Destiny's favorite Israeli historian Benny Morris puts it, Palestinians need to be put in a cage. Destiny attributes the failure to reach a peace settlement to the Arabs and Palestinians, who he portrays as being religiously, culturally, and socially prone to violence. They just don't want peace, are fundamentally anti-Semitic, are hungry for wars, display an inability to engage in diplomacy, and in any case cannot be reasoned with. However, contrary to this no partner for peace Zionist trope, it is in fact Israeli violence, intransigence, and its strategic peace obstructionism that prevents a peaceful resolution to the conflict. This is due to the foundational Zionist Israeli opposition to the creation of a sovereign Palestinian state, which logically precludes a peaceful two-state resolution. Finally, I will argue that the Zionist endorsement of the two-state solution is a chimera, designed to indefinitely sustain the status quo, ever with the hopes of a final solution, a future fuller ethnic cleansing under the cover of war, in order to complete the settler colonial project. This is the context of the current Gaza crisis. Like Benny Morris, Stephen publicly supports the two-state solution, even as he thinks, and perhaps even hopes, that ethnic cleansing is inevitable. Honestly, he says, I'm pro-genocide. Palestinians can go live in another place. His interlocutor asked rhetorically, so the Palestinians can, quote, Native American the F out of there? This eloquently sums it up for you, the Zionist logic. As the founder of revisionist Zionism, Ze'ev Jabotinsky, put it in 1923, quote, it is utterly impossible to obtain the voluntary consent of the Palestine Arabs for converting Palestine from an Arab country into a country with a Jewish majority. The native populations have always stubbornly resisted the colonists. The native population of the Americas fought the European pioneers with the same ferocity. It does not matter at all which phraseology we employ in our colonizing aims. Colonization can have only one aim, and Palestine Arabs cannot accept that aim. It lies in the very nature of things. In a moment of brutal honesty, David Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, also expressed the obvious truth, saying, quote, politically, we are the aggressors and they defend themselves. We have come here and stolen their country. Why should they accept that? In fact, Palestinians have long accepted that, and it's high time for Zionists to do as well. And here is a summation of my arguments that I hope to expound in this debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that opening. We are going to kick it over to Stephen for his opening as well, but want to say in the meantime, folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, I'm your host, James Coons. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We have many more debates coming up, and DebateCon 5 this October 5th in Newark, New Jersey. More to come on that, but first, let's kick it over to Stephen for his opening. Thanks for being with us. Stephen, the floor
Hold
is
on, wait,
all
real
yours.
quick. Can you what is the prompt again for this?
Israel versus Palestine. Who is more at fault?
Who's more at fault? Just that. Okay. I'll be short and sweet here. When we look at the modern conflict and we see who's at fault, I feel like the opposing opening statement, I think, works just fine for my opening statement. I think that a lot of Arabs and Palestinians especially consider that Israel was conceived of and born in sin, and therefore it has been the policy, both de facto and de jure, whether we're talking about the actual rejection of things like the Partition Plan in 47, we're talking about the 3 no's that the Arab League all issued at the Khartoum Conference in 67 after the Six-Day Wars, or after we're talking about explicit rejection of peace talks in 2000 at Camp David, Taba Summit, or 2008, between Abu Mazen and Olmert. There is just no type of Israeli state that can ever exist in the Levant. I think that every single argument that my interlocutor gave, and will expand upon here, leads us to only one conclusion, which is we either have to destroy Israel as a state that protects the ethnic Jewish character of the state, or Israelis and Jewish people just need to leave the Middle East, both of which I believe satisfy the idea that Palestinians, or at least this type of Palestinian strain of thought, just cannot have or deal with Israeli people or the country of Israel existing in the Middle East. So I feel like the biggest driver to, or I would say one of the largest drivers, probably the largest driver to an inability for both sides to seek resolution, is that there is just no Israeli state that the people in the Middle East are willing and ready to accept, at least not the Palestinians or the people that support them and the more radical ideas of them.
You got it. Thank you very much for that opening as well, Stephen. We're going to jump into the open dialogue. First, just want to let you know, if you've seen it on the Modern Day Debate homepage on YouTube, tomorrow, Destiny versus Tiger King, Joe Exotic. It's not a joke. It's for real. Don't forget to hit subscribe for that epic debate tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. You don't want to miss it. With that, we're going to jump right into the open dialogue.
Yeah, Stephen, thanks so much for that. I think it's interesting that you've said that you have no problem with what I've said in the opening statement, because what I said in my opening statement definitely differs with many of the statements that you've made in the past. For example, you have said that you don't think it's settler colonialism, and that's the entire framework which scholars view the conflict as. So are you now is ceding that point that you're wrong on the issue of settler colonialism, is my first question for you.
I don't know what settler colonialism has to do with I don't know what settler colonialism has to do with the current conflict as we understand it. I mean, historically, you had Jews that lived in the Kingdom of Israel. You had caliphates that expanded across the Middle East. Then you had Jews moving there from the 1880s onwards. You had, all sorts of people colonizing this particular region. I don't know if I would stop and say, like, just Israel was settler colonialism, or the Muslims before were settler colonialism. So I don't know the relevance exactly.
Well, there is definitely relevance because that's the entire framework, but you're also confusing terminology. So you're confusing classical colonialism with settler colonialism, and you're also confusing the word imperialism. These are 3 different terms. So only the Zionist project is a settler colonial project. Do you understand the difference between these 3 different things?
Sure, explain, what do you mean by settler colonialism?
So settler colonialism, there's a difference between classic colonialism and settler colonialism. Classic colonialism is where there's a metropole, and the metropole is trying to exert its influence over another region in order to extract and exploit its resources. Okay, that's classical colonialism, like the British Empire. Okay, imperialism is like the Roman Empire. They expand their borders, and those are like the Islamic empires that you're trying to lump in as well. So that's the difference between imperialism and classic colonialism. And then there's settler colonialism. Settler colonialism is in which you have a population that usually almost always breaks away from the metropole and then tries to settle a new territory and replace the population. And that, because of that, inherent in that is ethnic cleansing. So that is the issue of settler colonialism and why it's important to understand. And I can give you some resources for that. There's a book called Settler Colonialism, a Theoretical Overview. There's Patrick Wolf's article, Settler Colonialism and Elimination of the Native. And there's several other books that you can read on this topic as well. But it's important, even if you don't think it's important, but in order to get the framework to understand that that's how this started, and it still is a settler colonial project, that you have settlers, right? You have settlers in the West Bank. So that's still a settler colonial project.
So my understanding is there was land that was purchased. So I mean, we can go through each of these individually. When Jewish people bought land from the Ottoman Empire prior to 1917, was that settler colonialism?
Okay, so here we have another thing that you've said in the past. You've said that the majority of the land was purchased by the Jews. You said that in your podcast with Lex Friedman at about the 30-minute mark. You said, I've never heard of, never hear anything about the fact that the majority of the land that was acquired happened by purchases from Jewish organizations of Palestinian Arabs of the Ottoman Empire before the mandatory period in 1920 even started. However, this is completely false.
It is false. That's correct. It's the majority of the land that was purchased prior to that. The majority of the land occupied after 47 would have been
okay. So I'm just,
yeah, of course.
So I'm just saying, based on the statement that you said, that statement was false, and that it was Jews only owned 7% of the lands at the point of partition, 19.
What percentage of the land did the Palestinians own?
So they occupied the majority of the lands, and
no. I'm sorry. What is the number?
So I don't have that number for you.
That's wait. Do you think that's curious that you have the 7%, but you don't have the other? Because the implication there is 93%. But I think it was 13%.
Well, I have no, that's not true. I have actually seen different numbers for this,
Okay.
and I have even seen people say that it's 70%. Okay, but I don't have that exact number for you. But the point is that you're now obfuscating because this is a complete debate.
Well, I'm not obfuscating.
You're trying to make the point that they didn't steal the land, they didn't occupy the land, they bought the land fair and square, right?
I never even said, just to be clear for where we are.
That's the implication that you're making,
I did,
right?
We don't have to talk at implications. You gave me a definition of settler colonialism. You said that inherent in the idea of settler colonialism is ethnic cleansing. And I mean, to some extent, that is probably true. I would imagine if you move to a land where there are people there and you move them off the land, if we consider that to be ethnic cleansing today, common parlance, then sure. But my
that's
question,
not common parlance. That's a technical term.
Well, it's not like a law. It's not
cleansing.
Ethnic cleansing is not. It's not like a legal term. It's not like a.
It is a technical term that scholars use.
Some scholars use the term ethnic cleansing. I'm aware. After 91, some scholars have taken to using this term, but it's weird to apply that prior to 91 or going back.
So you're saying that before 1991 there was no ethnic cleansing that ever happened in history. This is a technical term that historians use, scholars use to talk about the past. So again,
I don't believe good historians use the term ethnic cleansing when they're describing things in the past, but that's not neither here nor there.
Is your favorite historian Benny Morris? Is he a scholar that you would rely on?
I'm not
for this?
saying that my favorite historian is Benny Morris.
He has called it settler colonialism. He has called it ethnic cleansing.
That's great. My question was a very simple question. I just had a simple question of like, we go back again?
Why are you avoiding the terms that scholars have used for this? The reason why you're retreating from it is because
just to let you know, right after this round, I'm going to ask the same question because you're
That's okay.
Pretty insane. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
My only question was, I asked, was land purchased prior to 1917? Would that be considered part of settler colonialism? You answered that question with a quote that I given to Lex Friedman like 12 months ago. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, so yes, you have asked this question before where you asked, is it a big deal that they're just purchasing the land? What's wrong with that, right? That makes sense. Like, what's wrong with me going and purchasing land in China, right? I could do that, but there's a difference between purchasing lands and then saying I'm purchasing land with the plan to A, kick off all the in this case, the non-Jews from the land, and B, most importantly, that eventually I want to establish a state. That was an intention with the Zionists from day one, even before they started this process. Okay, so that is the key differentiator. It's not just purchasing lands, it's about purchasing land with a settler colonial project in mind. And here we have Theodor Herzl, the founding figure of Zionism, who has said this explicitly. He wrote a letter to Cecil Rhodes, who is a British imperialist, and said, hey, why doesn't the British Empire help us in this project? Because it is a colonial adventure. So this is a key difference. Yes, they're purchasing the land. And the Ottomans, by the way, they said, you can come settle in Ottoman Empire, you can buy land, but you just can't focus in Palestine. Yeah, go ahead.
What'd you say, James?
I do want to keep it rolling in terms of the dialogue. Go ahead, Stephen. It sounds like Javad wrapped up just in time.
Yeah, so Theodore Herzl died in, I think it was like 1907, right? 1908, 1907, around there. So whatever conversation he was talking about in terms of settling Jewish people in the Ottoman Empire, the idea that he would ask the British, can you help us like go and conquer the Ottoman Empire and create a state and carve it out of the Ottoman Empire as we buy land? What was the exact conversation that Herzl, this exchange of letters that he was asking for? Was it to conquer the Ottoman Empire? That's what he was asking the British in what, in 1880 or in 1900? And when?
It was the letter is in, I think, 1902, and he's trying to get the British to, he's trying to get any big power, and including the British, to help them to establish a state. And the Christian Zionists, by the way, who preceded the Jewish Zionists, did in fact have that plan that they are going to conquer that territory, and they did so. In fact, the Balfour Declaration came 1 year before the British occupation. And the even decision to occupy Palestine was done because of the influence of the British Christian Zionists, who were in conversation with the Jewish Zionists.
That's great. Timelines are a little important here, though, right?
Sure,
Balfour
yeah,
Declaration was
of
a whole.
course.
This is like a decade after the death of Herzl. The idea that Herzl is having a conversation with the British, asking them, "Can you please help us conquer the Ottoman Empire?" when the Jews were still pretty hated across Europe and didn't even have a guarantee that there would be a state set up anywhere. It seems like that conversation is being exaggerated a tad. I don't believe that was the nature of those letters exchanged.
There's an actual letter, and number two is, you're right that anti-Semitism was rife in Europe, but in fact Zionism started out with being, I mean, if you read Herzl's own writing in his diaries, as well as the Jewish state, as well as he even wrote an article under a pseudonym, he was friends, he said, the anti-Semites will be our best friends. And why is that the case? Because they have the same goal and say that Jews don't belong anywhere in the world, not in Europe. The only place they belong is in Palestine. So the fact that they had anti-Semitic views, Lord Balfour, who did the Balfour Declaration, he actually helped pass the Aliens Exclusion Act, which was specifically about Jews coming from Russia to come to England, and he passed that because he was anti-Semitic, and at the same time he supported Zionism. He was a Christian Zionist.
Sure,
So
yeah,
these things are not in conflict with each other.
Sure, Jews were definitely trying to find a place to move their people to. I agree.
Not Jews, Zionists, who were a minority of the population. In fact, they were such a minority.
Well, hold on.
that
Zionists were searching for Jews, not because of historic like oppression against Zionists, but because of oppression against Jews historically, right? It wasn't just Zionists that wanted to.
Yes, but Zionists had the belief that early Zionists, including Theodor Herzl, had the anti-Semitic belief that Jews themselves are the reason for anti-Semitism, that they create anti-Semitism by their very presence because they don't belong anywhere other than their own homeland. That was the belief that they had. And so,
wait, hold on, wait.
Just one last point.
Okay.
And the reason, and most Jews at that time, they thought this was incredibly anti-Semitic, and they didn't agree with the Zionists, and that's why the first Zionist Congress, they were initially going to meet in Munich, and they had to relocate because both the Reform Jews and the Orthodox Jews protested and said, you can't have this anti-Semitic conference here. And so they had to relocate to Basel. So that is the case of Zionism being a fringe anti-Semitic idea initially.
So Zionism was a fringe idea initially. Obviously, all ideas start off as fringe. Anti-Semitic is a huge stretch.
You can read his own writing.
There's no part in reading his writing where he will say that he's anti-Semitic or say that
he says, I will be considered an honorary anti-Semite. This is in his work. He says this. Just look up his complete diaries and type in search anti-Semite.
Why does he say honorary anti-Semite?
Because that's what other Jews are accusing him of.
No, I believe he even makes this reference in his book, A Jewish Nation. The reason why he says that is because as Jews create their agencies to move people into the Levant, he's saying that the Christians in Europe will help us because I will be helping them move all of the Jewish people out. And Christian, yes, correct. But that's not, hold on, wait, stop, hold on. That's not, yes, that's not anti-Semitic. That's him acknowledging pragmatically that as Jews leave Europe and Jews go to the Middle East and go to Palestine, that the Christians in Europe will help us leave because they hate us so much. That's not an anti-Semitic idea. I don't need to read. I just told you. You just agreed with me with what the context of that quote was. Okay. You relied on me not knowing. So it wasn't an anti-Semitic idea.
Read his article, Moshel, which was written in a pseudonym. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's considered a racial slur against Jews. He wrote that. It is full of anti-Jewish tropes. Okay, that is the origin. But anyways, we can move on. You don't have to agree with this. I encourage you to read up on it. But the point is, let's get back to the fact that this is a settler colonial project. Okay, can we agree on that now? We've agreed on that?
So you said that, so if we purchase land because the
Mhm.
intent is to create a nation, you would still consider that settler colonialism, yes?
I would
doesn't
consider
defeat
that
your
it was
argument,
a
so you
part
just
of
agree
the
with-
settler colonial project.
Okay,
Yes,
gotcha.
they had
Okay.
a settler colonial project in mind, and the
Okay.
first stage of that was purchase. Their plan was to purchase enough land,
Mhm.
then kick out the Arabs from that land, and once they were strong enough to build an army and then do the rest. And there are explicit quotes about this.
So if I don't understand, if the goal was, if it was always to kick out the Arabs, this is a complaint
Mhm.
that's often lodged against early Zionists. Why is it in 47? Why did they accept a partition plan that would have had 45% of their population being Palestinians?
Okay, this is an argument that you've raised on numerous occasions in different
Mhm.
debates, and I'm very
Indeed.
shocked that you would make this argument because
Why would you
it-
just waste
history-
15 seconds of your answer saying that? Why not just like answer the
Well,
question?
you waste a lot of time saying a lot of things,
I
Destiny.
don't.
Um,
I'm speaking. I brought up a clear and concise
all
point.
right.
I just asked for a
What's your-
response, and we got to
what's
like,
the-
well, at
what's the
15 different
point?
debates, you brought this up. Like, just
Let's
yeah,
jump
it's
to
okay.
it,
You can just-
Javad.
Okay. Yeah. So the reason that it's a silly argument is number one is you base this first on the argument that they even really accepted the UN partition plan. They tactically accepted the British partition, the UN partition plan, but they always rejected all of the details of it, other than the fact that it gives them Israeli state from which they can expand. So they didn't accept the borders and they didn't accept the demography. In fact, we have explicit quotes, not just from, and I've seen what you've discussed with Loner Box. It's not just the 1937 partition plan, but it's also 1947, where they said that they're not going to accept these aspects. And when here I'll give you the explicit quotes. Here's David Ben Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, December 3rd, 1947. Every school child knows that there is no such thing in history as a final arrangement, not with regard to the regime, not with regard to the borders, and not with regard to international agreements. History, like nature, is full of alterations and change. This is from David Ben Gurion's War Diaries, December 3rd, 1947.
Why is he saying that?
Okay.
What's the point of saying something like that?
What the point is that he always has in mind that he's going because the other Zionists didn't want to accept the partition plan because they wanted all of historical Palestine.
Correct. That's right.
Yes.
He has to
Yes.
have these ideas because
Including
he has to
David
try to sell.
Ben-Gurion.
Yes, he has to have these ideas because he has to sell to the Jews there. Hey, we need to accept this partition plan. Listen, I know that you are upset about accepting this now, and it seems like not much. But hey, listen, history is before us. Who knows what will happen in the future? So what you just quoted in an example of them accepting the partition plan, they did. Now, if you want, we could try to roll with a historical counterfactual that, well, maybe in the future they would have broken it, but since the Arabs rejected it outright, we'll never know. So it is the fact that they did indeed accept the partition plan in 47. They did, and the Arabs didn't. Like, they accepted the borders, they accepted the demography.
That is not true. That they accepted. Okay, so here, let's go through the evidence, okay? So this is, by the way, there's an Israeli historian who has written an entire article on this. It's Simha Flappin, myth number 1. Zionists accepted the UN partition and planned for peace. That's chapter 1, okay? Let's go through the evidence. David Ben Gurion has multiple quotes where he says, quote, "A Jewish state in part of Palestine is not an end, but a beginning. Through this, we increase our power, and every increase in power
I'm so
facilitates
sorry, and I don't mean to be disrespectful. I don't know what your
Yeah.
major, like your concentration is for your PhD. Why do you think it's acceptable to give me one quote as a rejection of the argument that I just gave? I just told you that the Israeli people, they accepted multiple quotes is not an argument, sir. You need to show me that they rejected at the UN. Did they reject the partition plan? Did they accept Resolution 181, or did they reject it? They accepted it. We can go and we can read the UN logs. We can look at them.
So my argument wouldn't allow that because I'm saying that they did accept it deceitfully. So
maybe they did, but they did accept it.
We know that
they accepted it, right? Then they did accept it.
So remember when you said that in a previous debate, you talked about Yasser Arafat being deceitful about Oslo Accords, right? So there, for you, all of a sudden, his deceit, supposedly, which you were wrong about on that point, but let's say that he was being deceitful and saying something else to Arabs or Muslims somewhere else, that is factually relevant to you. But here it's not.
It is, but I would never say they didn't accept the Oslo Accords. They did accept the Oslo Accords. Now, he might have been deceitful, he did it, but they accepted it.
Didn't you hear me say that they tactfully accepted it?
That's fine, but then that doesn't. But if
here's
they
Chaim
accepted
Weizmann
it
in
even tactfully,
1937.
even if they did it in a sneaky manner, then the Arabs rejected it. That's true. These are
Here's
true, right?
Chaim Weizmann, the first president in 1937. We shall expand in the whole of the country in the course of time. This is only an arrangement for the next 25 to 30 years. Moshe Sharet in 1947, September. We will get hold of as much of Palestine as we think we can hold. Benny Morris talks about how he never, this is talking about the 1937 partition plan. Avi Schleim talks about the 1947 partition plan, that it was just a tactful. And here is the most damning quote for you, is Shlomo Ben Ami, who is the former Israeli foreign minister. He says, quote, his acceptance, Ben Gurion, of this principle of partition, he explained a week later, was an attempt to gain time until the Jews were strong enough to fight the Arab majority. And in early December 1947, this is a few days after the
Fight
UN
the Arab
resolution.
majority for what? Because they thought the Arabs were going to launch war against them. Guess what happened after 47 when the Arabs rejected the partition plan? They went to war against them. Yes.
Okay, so this is another mistake that you've made. And this is also another chapter in Simha Flappin's book, where you initially, in one debate early on, and you fixed it later because you realized it was completely false, you claimed that the Nakba happened because the Arab states invaded. And then Dan Cohen rightfully explained to you, you said literally that what preceded it was the Arab states invading.
Which
and
is
then
not
Dan
true.
Cohen,
What preceded it were the Arab
yes,
Palestinians attacking the Israelis.
correct.
And then
No,
the invasion of the Arab
false.
states happened
That's their
in June of 48.
So
Correct. That is the actual state. Yeah.
No. So first of all, let's accept that you made that mistake at that time. Okay, let's accept that. Can you concede that? Because you've said that you don't like how people don't concede things when they should. So
I'm not here to make concessions for statements I've made between 1 and 12 months ago. No. So I'm not here to concede anything I've said in the past.
So it's strange that you think that that 1 year ago, if you know, 8 months ago is that big a stretch of a time. But I've
said plenty of incorrect things over the past 7 months.
I know.
But I'm not here to concede every single one of those things.
I mean, you didn't know where Palestine was on a map in the beginning of this.
Yeah,
right?
and you apparently don't know how to study history. What is your PhD in?
My PhD is in the study of religion at a little university.
Okay, I can tell because you've said 37 partition plan like 3 times now. 37 wasn't a partition plan. That was the Peel Commission, which is where they for the first time suggested partition, but there was no partition plan accepted or rejected in 37, and you've referred to it as a partition plan like 3 times. So I don't know, but anyway, on this point, on this particular point, in 47, after resolution 181, after the partition plan was accepted by the Jews and rejected by the Arabs attacked the Jews.
That is,
by Arabs, I mean the Palestinians. Is that false?
That is false too. Let me get to that. But before I get to that, let's get to your claim that they accepted a 45% Arab population in their new state. Okay? This is Menachem Usiskin, chairman of the Jewish National Fund. Quote, we cannot start the Jewish state with half the population being Arab. Such a state cannot survive even half an hour. David Ben Gurion, quote, what is inconceivable in normal times is possible in revolutionary times. And if at this time the opportunity is missed and what is possible in such great hours is not carried out, the whole world is lost. What is he talking about? He's talking about ethnic cleansing. David Ben Gurion,
he's not. He's literally telling the people, that quote reinforces everything I'm saying. I understand that it's really hard to have a 45% Arab population, but revolutionary times can lead to radical measures. We could do this. That's the whole point of what you just quoted.
No, he's not. You're completely false. He's talking about forced relocation. David Ben Gurion in December 1947, you said that he accepted 45%. He said, quote, can be no stable and strong Jewish state so long it is a Jewish majority of only 60%. That's in December 1947. 1 month before Plan Dalit in February 1948.
In December of 47, the civil war had already started. Of course, the Arabs were already sieging and attacking the Jews at that point. Yes, they had barely just broken through and gotten back to Jerusalem. Now, of course, he would believe that in December of 47. What do you mean fine? The timelines are important.
No, the timeline is definitely important. Let's get to your next false claim, which is the claim that the Civil War began due to, first of all, you made the point about Arab rejectionism. So that let's get rid of that. That's not the case. The Arab states didn't invade. Let's get rid of that. So
do you admit at least that they rejected the partition plan, that 181 was rejected by the Arabs?
Okay, and do you know that you have said in so many other debates that UN General Assembly resolutions are non-binding? How many times have you stated that in other contexts?
Because sometimes they aren't. But that what does that have to do with anything?
Sometimes they aren't.
Just what I said. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't.
Did you know that oh, really? Why is this one binding and the other one not binding?
I'm not actually sure if this one would have been binding or not. Chapter 6, binding. I think, are generally binding. Chapter 7 generally are binding, I think. But regardless, I'm just saying that they didn't accept it.
Yeah, they didn't accept it, but they didn't launch a war. They weren't prepared for war. In fact,
I know they weren't prepared for war, but they...
Simha Flappin says, and it's backed up by Benny Morse's own quotes, even though Benny Morse will say that the Arabs started it, his own work reveals that they didn't. They weren't prepared for war. what happened was after the partition plan, there was protests. Some of them broke out into riots, and some of them broke out into attacks, just like the 1936 and 1939 Arab revolt that happened, and prior riots that had happened. It wasn't a war. Okay, it was the Irgun and the Lehigh terrorism that contributed to an escalatory procedure, which led to the war. And the Haganah was prepared for war. So on the one hand, you have people who are reacting to a decision and rioting, and on the other hand, you have a people who are have been preparing for a race war or an ethnic war. These are not morally equivalent at all. Okay, in fact, Benny Morris has multiple quotes in which he's saying that a few months into it, they're not even sure, is there a war? Elon Pape has mentioned how after a while the Zionists were like, it sucks that this resistance and this discontent has petered out, and the Palestinians are accepting this because we need the context of war. All right, because Zionists always need pretexts, and that's one thing that you're correct about, that Zionists always do seek pretexts for doing
very
the
convenient that the
they
Arabs
say.
always give that to them. I don't know why we're
wait, that's another
I don't know why
argument
we're
that
mixing up so many timelines. The 36 to 39 revolts have nothing to do with the partition plan that comes in
They have
47.
everything to do with it
Ben
because-
Gurion making statements in December of 47 would make sense, given that in November the partition plan was rejected and the civil war broke out. Are we saying that that never happened? That there were never groups of Palestinians that were firing on convoys that had cut off the Haganah Israelis from even getting to like the state of Jerusalem? Are we saying that all of this never happened? There was no organized fighting going on here? Do you not believe that in 47, at the end of 47, did the Palestinians engaged in organized fighting against the early Israel, I guess, or it wasn't Israel, yeah. Did they engage in this due to the partition plan, due to the rejection of the partition plan and Israel's acceptance of it? Do you agree with that or do you not agree with that?
So I'm going to read to you a quote by an Israeli historian.
Do you agree to that or do you not agree with that? You can disagree and then read a quote. I'm just curious. Do you agree or do you not agree with that? Do you agree that the rejection of the partition plan of 181, the rejection of that plan is what caused, it was what led to the Arab Palestinians launching a civil war, a war against the Jews?
I already told you that it was not the Palestinians who launched the war.
Who was it?
It was the Zionists who launched the war. Specifically, it was the Irgun and the Lehigh. The only reason why
the Irgun and the Lehigh were first of all, these are very, very minor segments.
That is not true at all. They were not.
Of course it's true. Yes, they are.
That's not true. In fact, you try to discount them, but in fact, there were Israeli prime ministers who come from their ranks. Okay.
Yeah, like who?
Yeah. Oh, yeah?
Who?
Like Shamir, Menachem Begin. So what are you talking about?
Yeah, Begin came from the Irgun, right? Do you realize that he sailed on a ship and it was destroyed by the Haganah as they tried to bring arms into Israel? And 48, it was destroyed because the Haganah hated the Irgun so much that as Menachem Begin was literally on a boat back to shore, he's like, man, I've gotten killed by Nazis, by Polish people, and now by Jewish people too. It's insane. The fact that you're citing a prime minister as though it lends credence to the Irgun, who was a prime minister 30 years after the date, doesn't satisfy or justify any of the arguments you're making.
One point, forgive me guys, it's just that this is a super high level conversation, which is awesome. It's just that if we can draw it back to the big picture for anybody who just tuned in, or even for people who have been listening the whole time.
To be clear, there is no big picture. Every single time not for some reason, I understand why. The Palestinian myth requires like a misstatement of every single historical fact, and then an obscurement with these massive macro modern terms for how to describe like movements. It's apartheid, it's settler colonialism.
Is Simha Flappin a pro-Palestinian activist? Or is he an Israeli historian?
If he says that Israelis were engaged in ethnic cleansing for no reason in 47, then yes, that would make him an activist. Yes. If he uses terms like ethnic cleansing or that planned Dalit was a pre-planned action to expunge.
Benny Morris has said it's an ethnic cleansing.
When?
He has, okay. What are you going to concede anything if I show you that he's calling it an ethnic cleansing?
I would tell you that I'm just asking at what time period is he referring to an ethnic cleansing? What thing are we talking about right now?
The Nakba. He's talking about the Nakba.
If you go by a modern interpretation, then yes, but the biggest contention of the Nakba isn't that it was an ethnic cleansing, right?
Well, of course that is.
No, the biggest contention is whether or not it was pre-planned. That's the whole point. That's the whole reason why people debate over planned Dalit. It wasn't whether or not it was an ethnic cleansing. Benny Morris will say that it was an ethnic cleansing, but say that it happened as a result of the war. All of the Arab nations started against Israel.
Okay.
The big contention is whether or not they pre-planned it or not, which is what you're using 4 quotes to try to show they did.
No. Okay. Do you want to show me? Do you? Okay. Here's another place where you're wrong. Is where
Tell me.
you claimed before you. This was in your debate with Eddie Liger. You meanwhile showed one quote, which
Mhm.
was a spurious quote, which even
Okay.
Benny Morris has said is spurious. That's the Azam Pasha quote. So you use the Azam Pasha quote that every Zionist propagandist uses, which is the one that you used, and you use that in order to claim that the Arabs wanted to drive the Jews into the sea. So you used one solitary quote to make your claim. And
Can you
then
give me like some
when
context? What was this in relation to, or what was it describing?
the Azam Pasha quote,
Yeah,
he
what
was
is the
the
quote and what
Secretary
were we
General of
arguing?
the Arab League. He was the Secretary General of the Arab League, and you use that
Was this
quote
in
in order to claim.
67 or?
No, this was before the Nakba. Okay.
Okay.
So you use one solitary quote to make the claim of ethnic cleansing. I'm telling you that Benny Morris himself has written an entire book on it. A book chapter on it. It's called The Birth of the Palestinian Refugee Problem Revisited, chapter number 2, which is in the expanded version. He talks about the idea of transfer in Zionist thinking, in which he says there was a consensus or near consensus amongst Zionists for transfer.
In what year?
From the before 1947.
From
All the way up. And then, so the only difference between Benny Morris and the other
I'm so
historians,
sorry. Like,
the only,
not that
the only
okay.
difference,
I'm sorry, but like you don't know any of the pre-47 history. Like I don't know
of
how to
course I
talk
do.
to you.
Why would you
when
say,
you because
you
when you
are the
speak in
one
a
who didn't
broad
know where
brush, when you
Palestine,
speak in a
you
broad
didn't,
brush, there are distinct time periods from 1880 up to 1947. And for you to just say, oh well, they believed in transfer for all of these things, conditions changed. The Arab
their
revolts in
entire
36 to
scholars,
39 changed. The Peel Commission changed things. The
their
Jewish
entire,
revolts from 40 to 44
the
changed things.
Peel
The
Commission,
expiration of the
Do
mandatory period
Peel
in 47
Commission,
changed
I do?
things. The
the
Civil War
Peel
in
Commission
47 changed
itself,
things.
Hold
The
on one
invasion of the
second.
other Arab
I
states
want to.
changed things.
the,
You
I
can't
want to
the
make
just
Peel
sure
speak
that
this
Commission
whole
itself,
time period in a broad brush. It doesn't make any sense.
the Peel
I want to
Commission
make sure.
itself
Hold on one sec. I do
endorsed
want to jump
forced
in just to be
transfer.
sure that it's awesome. You guys have passion. I do want to be sure that each of you has your own time, or you're not interrupted by the other. So I do want to, without going into time sections, just remind you that if one is speaking, if you can hold off until they're done, and I trust that neither of you will dominate the time because both of you are so experienced.
Okay, so as far as the idea of forced transfer, there are scholars who have written about, like Nur Masallah has a whole book on this. Israel Shahak has a book chapter on this. Benny Morris has a book chapter on this. They've talked about the idea of transfer from the beginning of Zionism all the way to the Nakba. And so what they have said is it became a consensus, okay, by the 1930s and 40s is what Benny Morris writes, to
By
even the
after
Peel plan,
39, after the Arab
even
revolts from
no,
36 to
that's
39,
Well,
it
that's
let's
started to become a
just to
consensus
be
more.
that
let's give
I'm
Javad
telling you
maybe
what
30
Benny
more
Morris has
seconds.
written.
Benny
30 more
Morris
Okay.
doesn't
seconds for
believe that
Javad.
47 was an ethnic cleansing. I don't know why you keep saying that.
Are you serious? I just showed you the quote.
What was the quote?
Okay, so why don't you start? I'll get the quote ready, and you can get your next point, and then I'll give you the quote.
We can't speak broadly from the 30s to the 40s. My
What
understanding
I'm telling you is that it was a
from
consistent viewpoint throughout that entire
That's great.
period.
I don't believe that it was. I think
Okay.
that even through things like the Haran massacre in 1920, even through things right up, I think, until the Arab revolts in 36, right up to that point, I think there was still some idea that it might be possible for the two people to live together. That's why the Peel Commission, that was the commission that was conducted in 36, I think presented in 37, was such a big deal. It was the first time when people were like, oh shit, maybe this isn't working. Okay. And then they kind of went back and forth, and both sides were like, oh, probably not going to work. And then in 47, there was the big, okay, we're going to partition, largely along what was discussed in the Peel Commission. The Jews accepted, which is strange, given they want to expel all these Arabs, they would accept 45% of them, okay, being on the new country that they're going to accept. And then the Arabs rejected. And then the Palestinians engaged in war against the Israeli Jewish people there because they wanted to expel them, obviously, of course. And I'm even sympathetic towards wanting to expel them, of course. You feel like they're fucking invaders. Why would you not?
I know.
And then after they lost, then all of the what?
You've said you're pro-genocide, so I agree with you. But you meant ethnic cleansing, but not. But you use
Well,
the terms,
listen. Hey,
you
listen.
use it as the terms correctly.
If I am pro-genocide and I go to the Middle East and I'm surrounded by a bunch of Arabs, I would be in good company in 48. Okay, because they all wanted to get rid of the Jewish people there, obviously, of course, right?
Okay.
And then in 48, all the rest of the Arab states went to Israel, and they also tried to fight, and they lost. Yes.
Okay. So let me just quote Benny Morris now, because you asked for Benny Morris. So he's saying by the 1920s and 30s, quote, This is from the book Birth on page 59. A consensus or near consensus formed amongst the Zionist leaders around the idea of transfer. All understood that there was no way of carving up Palestine, which would not leave in the Jewish designated area a large Arab minority or an Arab majority, and that no partition settlement with such a demographic basis could work. Then on page 43, the logic of transfer solution to the Arab problem remained ineluctable. Without some sort of massive displacement of Arabs from the area of the Jewish state to be, there could be no viable Jewish state. And then you're talking about the only difference between him and others is that he refuses to say that it was a plan. He instead says it was a pattern. That's all. And then he says in his reply to Karsh, it's Refabricating 1948. That's the article, because Karsh is one of those guys who's like you, denying the ethnic cleansing. This is what Morris writes to him. Quote, perhaps I erred in not attributing enough weight to the Zionist transfer predisposition in explaining what actually happened in Palestine in 1948. Done. That's it. So he's admitting that there was this consistent, near consensus, and all of a sudden you have that exact same thing happening. You have statements going.
You
all the
understand,
way
for
from
just as a real quick
Herzl-
thing, you understand that
Yeah.
transfer is not the same thing as ethnic cleansing, right?
You understand that Benny Morris has said that it's ethnic cleansing and that that's his euphemism, correct?
Hold on, no. You understand that,
Yes, he
like,
has.
for instance,
You
so
want
wait,
me-
would
you
you
want
have
me to go
would
get that
you
quote
well
now
hold
for you
on?
too?
Would you have
Yeah.
considered if they would have accepted partition 181? Is that ethnic cleansing?
What's partition 181?
If UN General Assembly Resolution 181, which is the
Yeah,
official name given to the 1947
not
partition plan,
Yes.
yes, it was the partition plan.
Right.
Okay. If they would have accepted that,
Mhm.
would you have considered that ethnic cleansing?
Absolutely not, because the resolution specifically said not to do that. It said to protect the minorities
It
within
didn't
your state.
explicitly say not to do. Ethnic cleansing doesn't even exist as a term. So why would it explicitly
They
say?
didn't
not
use
to
the
do
word
it?
ethnic cleansing.
No, there was no understanding of ethnic
specifically
cleansing. This is
said-
a very modern understanding thing.
They specifically said to protect the minorities within those two states. Okay, which is different than the Peel plan, in which the Zionists convinced the British to do forced transfer.
No,
Okay.
the Peel. I don't even think there was a Peel plan. I don't even know what you're referring to. The Peel Commission was when partition was recommended because they
There's the
didn't
Peel
because they
plan,
didn't get
but okay,
along with each
you know,
other.
when you call it partition 181, then you're okay messing up terms. But when you're saying that I'm using a euphemism, I mean, anyways.
Wait,
so
what
the
was the
point
Peel
is,
Commission again? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
the
Can you explain it to me?
1937
Wait, can
Peel
you explain what that
Commission.
even was? Yeah.
So that was a plan of giving a Jewish state in a small percentage of the land, about 25%, I believe, or so, and it required the forced transfer either voluntary or forced, of Arab minorities in that region. And so the Zionists are the ones who came up with that idea because, again, that was their consistent
Okay,
viewpoint.
that's not. I don't know.
Okay,
We're
because
just living in
you-
different house. So,
wait,
so what
wait,
was
tell
happening
me
was there were multiple
I'll give
white
you the exact
papers. There were
quote.
multiple
Yeah.
white. I don't need a quote. I don't live in quotes. Okay, you're a PhD. You should be doing better than quotes. Okay, the British had
I'll use
discovered
Wikipedia.
the British
Wikipedia.
and the Jews and the Wikipedia would honestly be doing way better right now than whatever
Yeah,
the
I know,
quotes you're
that's what
reading
you
from.
do.
Okay,
Yeah,
than
yeah.
cherry picking quotes. Okay,
Benny
It
Morris.
would be helpful. It would
Benny
be helpful
Morris.
for you. It would be
Yeah.
helpful for you.
Benny
The
Morris.
British
Adi
had
Schlein.
realized, and all the
Simha
people
Flappin.
who live there had realized, okay, that it wasn't working. Something wasn't happening, or something wasn't working. So
Who?
Peel
The
sent
Zionists
people.
believe
Peel
that.
One sec,
sent
just to be-
people. He sent a commissioner to Palestine, to the mandatory area, to do an analysis and figure out what the fuck is going on. Why isn't this working? So they go there. They do a big analysis. They do a census. They figure out like who's paying taxes, who's built stuff, like why isn't it working? You know what's going on, and then they come back and they present their findings and they say, hey, this is what's going on. Maybe it seems to be the case that because these two people's differences are irreconcilable, they might have to split up. That's it. It wasn't like a huge like a plan to split everybody, and the Zionists were doing it. It was an analysis of what was going on at the area, commissioned by the British, by Peel.
So the things that you're talking about, yes, there was the King Crane Commission report of 1919, which was looking into what the violence was caused from. There was the 1939 white paper, which these were different evaluations of the area. And of course, they did that in the Peel thing, but the Peel thing was a plan for partition. And the Zionists accepted it. In fact, that's
But
a
it's
Zionist
not
talking
ethnic
point.
cleansing.
It's forced transfer of the
It wouldn't have been
population.
if it's an accepted agreement. That's not forced transfer.
If it's against the wishes of the population, then it's ethnic cleansing. If the British are the ones doing it, if the
but it wasn't the British weren't going to do it. It was just it was a suggestion.
No, it was absolutely the British who were going to do that. In fact, Ben Gurion said it has to be the British who does that because we don't want to look bad. Okay,
because so why didn't they do it then?
Because the plan was scrapped. There was the Arab revolt.
Why yes, and the Arab revolts, by the way, were a huge reason why the Palestinians lost so badly in 47. They crushed the
Of
Arabs
course,
there.
they got
But if they
of course,
but if
the
they wanted to
colonial
implement
power, the colonial power crushed the
if
indigenous
they wanted
population.
and if they wanted to implement some huge split, some huge like establishing of a Jewish state, why wouldn't they have just done it in 39 after they chased out like basically all the
What
Arab
was the,
leadership and
sorry,
crushed the middle place?
can you repeat the
The
question
British
again?
were never going to implement the Peel Commission, right? That was just the
There were
analysis they
different
did.
factions. There were different factions amongst the British. There were some that were Zionists, and there were some that had more pro-Arab viewpoints. So what happened was in the Peel Commission, it was a Zionist-facing plan, and then things changed, especially with the war, the war and all this kind of stuff. Things changed. Yes. So the different plans differ. So the 1939 white paper, for example, guess who liked that better than? So the Arabs like that better, right? And how did the Zionists respond to that? Do you know? They initiated waves of terrorism. Okay, and the waves of terrorism.
Why did they initiate waves of terrorism?
Against the British.
Yeah,
because
why?
the British were backing off from partition and said the majority of the population does not want partition, that it's not feasible, and therefore we should give this country, we should eventually move towards a democracy, and that's what we should move toward representative government. And that's what the Arabs wanted. That's what the Palestinians wanted. In fact,
that's what happened in 1940. The Brits said, we're going to make a representative democracy with the Arabs in Palestine, the first of all of its kind in 39. And then the Jews were like, no democracy. We're going to go do terrorism against the Brits. That's what happened.
It's 1939, the white paper. Yes. So I don't know what you're talking about. In fact, in 1920, there was this Syrian Congress in which they created the Arab Kingdom of Syria, which was a constitutional
which lasted
monarchy,
for how long? Syria had a revolution and a coup like every 2 years for like 3 decades,
really?
bro.
Who crushed it? Who crushed it?
I don't know what the Mossad patriots that existed before the state of Israel did.
The French and the British, including the Christian Zionists. And you know who didn't sign on to the constitutional monarchy with equal rights for all religious minorities? The Zionists.
You understand in 1940, the big reason why I don't know where this fantastic story, or maybe I do, I don't know, maybe it came from a friend of yours, but the idea that in 1940, the reason why the Jews were fighting against the British because they were upset that a democracy was going to be created is not true. What they were mad about was, what you don't mention is after the Arab revolts, the British said, hey, in order to like kind of ease tensions in this area, we're going to walk back on our agreement that we made with the Jewish people with the Balfour Declaration. We're going to say, we're going to heavily restrict immigration. And you know what was happening at that same time? And I know how much you guys hate to talk about this, but there was the Holocaust going on. And there were a lot of Jews that were really fucking mad that people were being death camped and they couldn't actually go to Palestine because the Brits had said no more immigration. There are famous stories of certain boats full of Jewish people being turned back.
And you know
that's why they were mad. Yes.
And you know what the Zionists did?
They did a whole wave of terrorism from 40 to 44.
Not only that, they prevented immigration of Jews to other countries. They put on pressure for the US and the British not to accept Jewish refugees. Ben Gurion has a famous quote. Ben Gurion has a famous quote where he says that I would rather I save only half of Europe's Jewish children and they come to Palestine rather than all of the Jewish children if they go elsewhere.
You live in quotes. I love your quotes. That is true. When he was having a conversation about how he felt about people fleeing, but that wasn't a policy position, and he certainly didn't encourage people not to accept Jewish refugees. He didn't need to. The entire world hated him.
The Zionist lobbied for the immigration restrictions. In fact, there was even a famous case where they bombed a ship, dude.
Oh, like in Baghdad, those Jews, that was all done by the Mossad as well, right? The Baghdad bombings were done by Jews too, right?
Yeah, that was Avish. You read Avish.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, of course it was. Yeah. What else? What other ones do we have here?
You're denying that that's the case?
There's no evidence that that's the case, but I know everything you believe. I've done all of these before. All these conspiracies. Yeah.
So is Avi Schleim a conspiracy theorist story?
I don't know. It depends. I would have to see him write it. Your problem is Avi Schleim is generally a pretty good historian, so I seriously doubt that he's saying whatever they're going to claim.
Okay, how much? Okay, if you're going, I have the book right here. 3 Worlds.
I hope you got a sticky note with a quote ready for it.
Oh, I'll find it.
The USS Liberty, that was intentionally bombed by the Jews, right?
Okay, of course it was bombed. Yes, it was.
Intentionally, I asked. They knew it was a U.S. ship, but they bombed it, right?
Quote, page 129.
Yes.
That the 5 bombs
played
a part in persuading the Jews of Iraq to immigrate to Israel is beyond dispute. The big question is who planted the bombs. The evidence I have unearthed provides a partial answer to this question. 3 of the 5 bombs were the work of the Zionist underground in Baghdad. Avi Schleim.
Backed by, there it is.
Mind quoting, right? Oh, I'm sorry I use books instead of Wikipedia.
Yeah, you should try doing it on Kindle next time instead of having your little notes in the books. You understand that the quote that you gave didn't actually support like the argument that the state of Israel was engaged in terrorist attacks in other countries in order to try to force The
It was Zionist underground.
First of all, even that claim is contentious, which Avi Shlaim is saying right there, right? This is already a contentious claim based on new information.
I'm not saying that it's 100%.
Number one.
I'm
Okay.
saying that it's very likely. And
okay. Well, it seemed you implied that it was 100%, but.
Okay. I'm sorry that you think that, Stephen. All right. So let's go through the list of things that you've gotten wrong so far. Settler colonialism.
We don't even agree on that.
Benny Morris, settler colonialism, ethnic cleansing. I gave you the quote by Benny Morris on that. Did I, or do you need it still?
What was the quote again? What page? I'm sorry. Just give me the.
So hold on. Let me get that for you. And the reason. It's hard to find the exact quote when you need it, but it's definitely. Has definitely said it.
The fact that he wrote in like 2016 an article for Haaretz saying Israel conducted no ethnic cleansing in 1948.
Yes, he did.
Cut against your okay, but he changed his mind, I guess.
He changed his mind because he became a propagandist.
Gotcha,
So in 2014 Haaretz interview, they perpetrated ethnic cleansing. There are circumstances in history that justify ethnic cleansing. I know that this term is completely negative in the discourse of the 21st century. He's not saying don't use the term for past events like you do. And then he says, but when the choice is between ethnic cleansing and genocide, the annihilation of your people, I prefer ethnic cleansing. And that was the situation in 1948. That was the situation. That is what Zionism faced. A Jewish state would not have come into being without the uprooting of 700,000 Palestinians. Therefore, it was necessary to uproot them. There was no choice but to expel the population. It was
Why was it necessary to uproot them?
Why was it necessary to uproot
them?
Because Zionism has the belief that you need a super majority of Jews, which is at least 80%. And so because they believe that non-Jews will...
It wasn't because there was a civil war going on?
The civil war came after the Zionists decided to initiate the war, correct?
It didn't. No, it started. It started with the civil war. It started with the Arabs fighting the Israelis after the rejection of 181.
I already showed you that, as Simha Flappen has shown in quite detail, and Benny Morris's book will also prove this, is that Lehi and Stern Gang were the ones who, through an escalatory process, started the war. Because they kept bombing Arab villages and Arab civilians.
Response to Arabs attacking Jews.
No, the Haganah,
as they had been in the prior 2 decades.
They attacked. So the Haganah had the policy of restraint for a couple of months, in which they only did defensive retaliation. Now, their version of defense was if an Arab village, even one person attacked from that, will attack the entire village. That's their defensive, and that's Israel's policy now forever. But the Stern Gang and the Lehi said, no, we're not going to restrict it to that. We're going to do a preemptive attack against Arab villages. So you're wrong on this.
The Lehi and the Irgun might have engaged in preemptive warfare, but one, they were doing it in response to decades of Arab violence prior to that. It didn't come out of nowhere, number one. And number two, those two groups were very small groups that were rejected by the Haganah. The
Haganah and the Irgun and Lehi worked together at various times in history, including during the war we're talking about, the War of Independence. And all of them were folded into the IDF.
They were folded into it because they were disbanded. Yes, they were folded into the IDF because they were radical, because they were hard to control.
Integrated into the IDF.
They weren't just integrated. This is why when you brought up, that's great. That's fine.
The Stern Gang, the leader, there's streets in Israel named after him.
Go ahead, Stephen.
You understand that, like, the event that I'm referencing, when Begin was coming in on a ship with weapons for the Irgun, that the Haganah fired on that ship and destroyed it and stole those weapons and didn't allow the Irgun to have those weapons, right?
The reason is because the Haganah feared that if there was violence against the British, and especially while the British were still there, the British would retract their support, and that would create a problem. So that's
why the British would retract their support when?
So they were the mandatory power. So if they upset the British wouldn't allow there to be partition. So they knew that they can't. That's why they waited for the British to leave before they really, escalated their warfare.
No. They waited for the British to leave because that's when the mandatory period expired, and then they voted on what the country should look like afterwards.
You yourself have already said the Civil War already started before that period, correct?
No, the Civil War started right after the Arabs rejected the partition plan.
Exactly, before
47.
the period ended.
As the British were already leaving. That was the point of the
But the
partition
British
plan,
were
is what
still
would it
there.
look like
So now,
afterwards.
so do you see how you're like changing everything that you say? What I'm trying to tell you is that they didn't want to piss off the British during certain periods of time, and that's when they said to exhibit restraint. Then
No,
when
bro,
that wasn't the
you've
case,
already
then they
passed
said they don't have to
from
do
40 to
restraint.
44. The King David hotel bombing, all this shit had already happened. The Jews didn't give a
Yes,
fuck
so
about
at
the
very-
Brits by 47. Like, the shit was fucked. That's why the Brits wonder why they wanted to just leave and get out. From 40 to 44, the Jews had already engaged in like terrorist attacks and everything against the Brits that were there.
Yes, the Irgun and Lehigh, and at various times the Haganah, but it depends on the situation. So when the Haganah thought it was strategic, they did it. Otherwise, they opposed it, and sometimes the Haganah showed some restraint. So this is like you always say, be complex and nuanced. This is what I'm asking you to be right now. Okay, so I think we should move on because we've already gone to the point of you're claiming. Okay, the other thing, the only other point that I think we should get to is
One
the
sec.
idea
Pardon
that
my
the Arab
interruption.
states.
Is
Yeah, go ahead.
just if you're able to turn your mic up just a smidge, Javon, just to be sure that
Okay.
we someone in chat was saying, and I just want to be sure they can hear you as clearly as
I
possible.
don't know how to. Does that do the trick right
Not a
there?
problem. Frankly, I think it's good. Go ahead.
Okay. You have said that that the Arab states intended to ethnically cleanse the Jews, correct?
I don't like the term ethnic cleansing is stupid.
Did they plan on massacring the Jews or kicking them out?
In 48? Yes. 47,
When they
48, yes.
when they attacked?
In 47, 48?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
When the Arab states were involved. Okay. So first of all,
well,
you
hold
said
on.
that before.
Sure, I have. Well, because now I'm not sure we're going. So here's what I would say: the public rhetoric, and I think the citizens of these countries were eager to see that happen, which is, I think, how the Arab
Where's your
states,
proof
the
for that?
surrounding Arab states.
Where's your proof for that?
Because that was the Mufta in Jerusalem, the leader of the Palestinians at the time, wanted to see the Jewish people expelled. The Mufti, my bad, whatever, the guy that worked with fucking Hitler, okay? And the surrounding Arab states were obviously no fan.
The Serbian
one
also tried to
just
seek
to
an
be sure we
alliance
hear
with
one at a time.
Initially, initially, yes, because they hated
and
the
there's
Brits.
a Havara
I
agreement.
promise
that was
we'll
also
kick it
with
right
the
back over to you, Javad. I just want to hear the rest from Steven.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
go ahead,
yeah.
I apologize. I apologize. Go ahead.
The rhetoric from the surrounding Arab states was obviously that they needed to defend the Palestinians, especially because the Nakba, but the term partially originally coined because of the idea that the Arabs had failed to defend their population from being expelled by the Israelis when they came in and fought. There was ostensibly this idea of kicking them out, but I think that each individual nation was probably a little bit more concerned with their own borders and their own kind of like territorial conquest than actually committing to a hard expulsion of Jews. One, because they didn't have the military might or organization to do it, and two, because it was safer and easier to just conquer some territory and chill. I think that's probably why Egypt stopped in the Gaza Strip. It's probably why Jordan stopped after they had the West Bank, and it's probably why Syria stopped when they conquered a little bit in the north. Maybe they could have pushed further, but I don't know like how super committed to it, because Pan-Arabism after the defeat of the Ottoman Empire was always kind of like a myth and a dream, as we saw over the intervening decades where nothing really happened, even though they kind of say it. So that's my nuanced answer if you want it, but
I appreciate it. So okay, so in the past you have said, and I think it's important, I'm not trying to I'm glad that if you're shifting your opinion, that's great. But the reason why I think it's important is because it's a standard Zionist talking point, and it's a powerful talking point, which is the idea that the Arab states wanted to invade and ethnically cleanse or massacre the Jews. That's still that's what the majority of Zionists think, right? So let's go through that one by one. Let's see what the evidence shows. Number one, the Arab states were reluctant to attack. They were compelled into war by the angry public, who was reacting to what? Reacting to the Nakba. There were all these Palestinian refugees.
They were reacting to the Palestinians losing in 47, yes, and 48.
They were not them losing. They were reacting to them fleeing their homes in terror from the massacres
because they lost
because they were being massacred. No, they were being massacred. You don't have to be massacred. So Hutus and Tutsis, right? I know that you're a pro-ethnic cleansing guy, but normal people, when they see people getting ethnically cleansed, don't think that's something that you go, yeah, that's cool that they lost. Okay, but anyways, here's what General John Glubb said, and this is quoted in Morris's book, 1948, page 181. The Arab statesmen did not intend war, he writes, and they knew that they were heavily outmatched by the Zionist entity. They only very reluctantly and lethargically mobilized for war because, quote, none could ignore the Palestinian Arab tales of massacre and exodus. Morris, page 182 of 1948. The stated objective for the war, what was it? It wasn't what you claimed in many debates before, that it was to ethnically cleanse. It was to save the Palestinians from the massacres that were taking place. Quote, Morris, 1948, page 187.
Wait. You think that, hold on, so you think that in 40 and 48, you think the surrounding Arab states would have just wanted to fight to what? The partition borders in 181?
So let me tell you exactly what they were trying to fight for. They were trying, and this happens in multiple times in history.
Are you just going to say to save the Palestinians without actually?
Well, can I finish? Is that okay? So number one is yes, they were forced by the public to at least publicly say that's why we're going to, and reluctantly they went to war. And number two is they were desperately hoping for international intervention to stop the war. That's why they went to war. Okay, and they hoped that if they showed enough strong force initially, the international body would get involved. America would get involved. In fact, America did get involved. The Americans got involved, and the British got involved. There was an American British proposal. There was an American proposal that both proposals the Zionists rejected. Okay,
There was
to
already a proposal. It was called Resolution 181. The Arabs rejected it.
th-
Kind of
th-
hard to go back to that after you reject it, start a civil war,
so
and lose.
I already told you that the Zionists also rejected every
They
single
didn't, though.
part of
They
it.
accepted it. You're saying they sneakily rejected it. They didn't. They accepted it in whole.
No, they didn't. They falsely accepted it. Okay, so when you accept the resolution, is it okay if I say if there's a resolution that you can't have a nuclear weapon, is it okay to say yes, I accept that, and then go and make a nuclear weapon? Is that would that be acceptable to you, Stephen?
Asking me if it's okay to do it is
So
different
if
than
a
asking if it was
country,
accepted.
if a country said, yeah, if Iraq, let's say there was a resolution passed against
Mm-hmm.
Iraq that you can't have nuclear weapons, and then I said Saddam Hussein, he accepted the resolution, and then he goes to his cabinet the very next day and says, I didn't really accept this. We're going to make a nuclear bomb, and then he makes a nuclear bomb. Would you then use that as a talking point that see he didn't want to? He said that he's not going to have a nuclear bomb. What's the point of that?
The point is that I would say the point is that
worse.
No, yes, it does make it worse. The point is that now you can go with all of the condemnation of you violating and agreed upon, whether it's a chapter 6 or 7 UN resolution, you agreed to this resolution, you violated it. These are causes for war, these are causes bellies. Yeah, you can do these depending upon how, depending on the type of resolution. Yeah, of course.
First of all, it's a non-binding resolution. As you
doesn't matter if it's non-binding, you can still use it. It doesn't matter. You can still use it.
Americans said, let's go to the UN, propose that we should go to the UN Security Council and resolve this situation. And that's what the Arabs and the Palestinians wanted. And so it was only the Zionists who refused to do that. In fact,
the Arabs and the Palestinians wanted it.
There were multiple
they already shot down the UN resolving things in 47.
So you focus on one thing that they disagreed with, whereas you reject all of the, or you ignore all of the other proposals that the Zionists disagreed with. Why do you focus on that? Because it's a talk.
Ignore which ones? What are we talking
about? Should we go through the list of peace proposals that the Zionists have disagreed with?
After 48? What's the first one?
We can. Okay, we can.
There was the Lausanne Peace Conference in 52, where the Israelis accepted that they would have taken on 200,000 Arabs in the Gaza Strip. That was rejected.
Both
Arabs didn't want to leave it land. Yeah, what do
you got the year wrong, and you also got the number wrong of refugees. So
sorry, was it 51 instead of 52?
No. So first of all, it was not 200,000 refugees that they accepted. In fact, they rejected the American proposal, which was around that, and Truman sent a letter to the Zionist leaders and said to Israel and said that your
I don't know what are we talking about?
Right, Lausanne Conference. Okay, 1949. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So yes, and so you in the past have again because you always blame the Arabs because the reason why you blame the Arabs is because it's a Zionist talking point that the Arabs miss. Abba Eban said that the Arabs don't miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. So you parrot that point. But actually, what real scholarship has shown is that it's actually Israeli intransigence. There has not, in fact, actually, this is a really good book that I know that we don't like books, especially physical books, but Ze'ev Maoz is a great book that you should read. It's another Israeli scholar, by the way. He was the former academic director of the master's program at the Israeli Defense Forces National Defense College. His entire book is about how it's Israeli policy not to propose peace and to be very reluctant to accept peace. It's part of the Israeli strategy. And so we can go down the list.
For what years?
I want to.
So let's go.
I do want to give fair time to the whole timeline. At the same time, I do also want to focus on the more recent events in Israel, Palestine.
Can we? Okay, so can we move? How about this? Let's move on from 1948. We're not going to agree on that. So let's move on to the peace. Let's go to the next chunk of this debate, which is who's been actually intransigent, the Arabs and the Palestinians, as you have said, and Zionists say, or the Israeli side. So let's go through that. So let's go through all of the peace offers that Israel and the Zionists have rejected. Okay, so we can
Or
start.
we just we disagree on every single thing you brought us for. Are you just going to name a bunch of things and say this is where Israel? Like you understand, I'm probably
Well,
going to disagree with your
can
characterization of literally every single thing, right?
You could contest it. You could contest it. So
Well,
that's
like even
part
in
of the
loose
debate,
end, you,
right?
so you're saying
You-
that are you saying the Jews didn't consider like accepting that they were going to take back the Gaza Strip from Egypt and they were going to accept some 200,000
I mean,
refugees?
they definitely. You brought this up in a previous debate, and the guy laughed when you said, "Of course, they accepted that they wanted to take a Gaza Strip." Like, what? Why would that be something that you're going to use as an argument? They wanted the Gaza Strip and they wanted the West Bank. So, why would that be a thing for you? But
I don't think. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So let's. By the way, the Israeli new historians, they have written not only about 1948, but they've also written about the post 1948 period, in which they combat the old historian myth that it's Arab intransigence that led to a failure to convert the armistice agreements into formal peace treaties. In fact, the new historians have shown that it was Israeli intransigence. David Ben-Gurion said that he doesn't need anything more than these armistice treaties, whereas Egypt sought a formal peace. Syria sought a formal peace. Jordan sought a formal peace. And it was in all three cases, it was Israel who rejected this. So when you're trying to lay the blame, that's what you're trying to do with the Lausanne Peace Conference, is to say, look at these Arabs, they just don't want peace, right? That's what you're trying to prove, correct?
I don't know how to you're historically illiterate, so I don't know how to even begin to breach the conversation.
I really
You're bringing up Lucerne that happened in 49, and you're gonna give Sadat as an example of guy that pursued peace. That was in like 1970 was the first offer. If you want to make it even, if you want to make it,
you're just it's
Hold on,
I'm sorry, hold on, wait, I'm sorry, wait. Did Nasser hold on, wait, did Nasser offer Israel peace? Is that who we're talking about?
Yes, he did.
When was this? When?
Okay, so let's.
I don't know.
educate
Yeah,
you.
educate me,
Okay,
please.
so
Tell
let's
me. Yes.
educate you. Let's educate you. Okay, let's go through the timeline right now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Go ahead.
and you can contest, obviously. Okay,
I'm sure I won't.
let's
Go ahead.
start. Well, let's start from 1919 and 1920. There was the Faisal-Weizmann Agreement, and then there was the Arab Kingdom of Syria, which was a constitutional monarch. Wait, hold on. Let me just.
Israel didn't exist in 1919 or 1920. So rather than go through the pay spin of like pro-Palestinian, like anti-Semitic fucking links you have, let's start at 48 and go forward.
Just give me 30 seconds on the pre.
No, go give me. Tell me when did Nasser offer peace to Israel?
I do want to.
Okay, hold on. Before Nasser, you know that Nasser wasn't in the leadership role after 1948, right? You do know that, correct?
I don't know when he came into leadership, the year that he came into leadership, but tell me when you just said that he offered peace to Israel.
Historical illiteracy, please. Okay, so let's talk about
tell me when Nasser offered peace to Israel.
1948, American proposal to mediate and endorse trusteeship until a peaceful resolution could be reached, opposed by the Zionists. Morris, page 114 to 115 in the book 1948. 1948, Haganah.
Wait, what are you talking about?
Hold on, let me give me.
Let's put it this way.
I can't believe this is what a PhD from Harvard. This is insane to me. How is this possible?
Hold on 1 second. Javad, if you're able to give like a pithy explanation of where you're going. Are you able to give us like a summary, like a paraphrase of where you're going?
What I'm trying to say is, historically, there were 50 plus instances of Arabs and Palestinians offering peace to or outside groups as well, Soviets, the Americans, the French, offering peace, and it's Israelis who refuse. And the reason they refuse is because they cannot accept a Palestinian state. That is my argument. So it's very germane because Destiny claims that it's Arab intransigence, because that's a standard talking point. But what I'm trying to tell you is, can you name a single Israeli prime minister who accepted a sovereign Palestinian state?
A single Israeli prime minister who accepted a sovereign Palestinian state.
Yes, please.
I would argue that in 47, I would argue Ben-Gurion did, but with his acceptance of the partition plan. I believe that, I think it's publicly stated, I think in 2013, Netanyahu was probably willing to accept something, although it didn't happen. I know that Olmert, if you want to run off lists, so we can do it. You can look at 2013 Netanyahu Palestinian state if you want to find it. If you want to find this, you can.
Netanyahu, okay, perfect.
Yes, that's fine. If you're going to go ahead and quote at me, the Likud party platform, I'm also aware of that. Yes, Netanyahu is not the far-right conservative leader of things. He's just a person that holds coalitions. And he's a spineless fuck. Okay, pretty sure 2008, yes, Olmert went back and forth with Abu
did not accept,
and he would have probably accepted one. I believe in 2000, after the Camp David talks and after Taba, I'm pretty sure that there would have been an acceptance of a Palestinian state there. You could argue that the Oslo Accords were kind of an acceptance of a path to a Palestinian state. I mean, what do you want? What more?
Okay.
Can you give me here's a
Are
question. Can you give me an
100%.
example where the Palestinians have accepted the existence of an Israeli state with defined borders?
Yes.
Please don't just say that it's when Arafat
Okay,
recognized
hold on.
Israel.
Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
First, okay, so now you've given a list. Now let's respond in kind. You first said David Ben-Gurion, okay? So David Ben-Gurion, 12 days before the UN met to decide the fate of Palestine, he sent Golda Meir, representing the Jewish agency. She secretly met with King Abdullah of Jordan and reached a broad understanding with him, effectively splitting Palestine between them. This is in Iron Wall, page 31, Avi Schleim. Okay, so if you're going to say, let's say Germany and Soviet Union, they make a secret pact amongst themselves that they're going to split Poland in half. Do you think then that Germany is going to, you could say that they're accepting the existence of a Polish state? No, you'd say that they plan on invading. So that is the state.
That's not a plan on invasion. What are you talking about?
It is the plan to split the West Bank in half between Israel. Palestine in half.
I would have to see the details of that letter from Golda Meir. I don't know if it was to split it in half or if it was just an agreement. If it was an agreement,
it was for them to take the West Bank. It was for them to take the West Bank.
There you go. Not split it, but to take it. That's correct.
I already corrected myself right after because it was later that they went to splitting it. Because then David Ben-Gurion, after the war started, then he regretted that decision and said we should actually attack and get the West Bank. And then there was a big debate amongst the Zionists about whether they should do that or not.
Absolutely not. He would have never.
100%.
No, because they were super aware of the demographic issues. There's a reason why the fighting stopped where it did. No, absolutely not. They would have never invaded to take these things.
They were ethnically cleansing, right?
Not for no reason. No, there was a war.
But you're actually not 100% incorrect. It is because of demographic reasons that they decided not to do it, as well as, more importantly, because of the British. Okay, because the British were still involved with Jordan. Okay, but okay, let's go through the record now. You named David Ben-Gurion. So I already told you that 12 days before, that's what he said. David Ben-Gurion in 1956.
That didn't even make sense. What would the British being involved with Jordan have to do with Israel conquering the West Bank?
Because if they're conquering the West Bank, there can't be a Palestinian state. Right?
There wasn't a Palestinian state. Nobody even thought about this or cared about this at that point in time.
The entire argument of Zionists is that the Zionists agreed to the UN partition plan, which said half the land for you, half the land for us, an Israeli and Palestinian state. That's the whole Zionist topic.
And then the Arabs rejected it. Yes.
What I'm trying to tell you is even before that, 12 days before that, there was a secret plan that they're not going to do that. That they had made.
There wasn't a secret plan. There was a discussion because Abdullah.
There was an agreement. There was an agreement. There was an agreement.
No, I don't believe.
Yes, there was. You're wrong about this.
Okay.
It's an Iron Wall, page 31. Okay.
Oh, well,
now let's go to
Iron Wall, page 30. Oh, Jesus.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
My bad.
But how do you quote a book, right? Okay. David Ben-Gurion in 1956, quote, the West Bank should be organized in an autonomous area connected with Israel economically while Israel manages its foreign policy and security affairs. So what I'm trying to tell you is that every single Israeli prime minister, when they even have mentioned the state, they actually say less than a state, and they really mean an autonomous region or a Bantustan. So they don't ever want an actual Palestinian state.
When was that quote?
I'm trying to show now because you're always going to say, "Oh, that was this year, not the other year."
No, I want you to have an understanding of what you're saying. 56. That's what you said, right?
Please, for somebody who didn't know where Palestine was on a map, have some level of humility.
Yeah.
Please.
In 1956.
Please. So it's 1956. Okay.
Yeah.
Like.
And what would he have been talking about? What was Ben-Gurion talking about there? Sorry, what was the quote again?
He was talking about his plan for the Middle East. And he had a very expansive plan at that time, not only to, by the way, there was a war that was launched because of this plan. So anyways, so this was part of that. So part of his plan was that the West Bank should be organized in this way. Okay, so that's.
So the West Bank would have had, it would have just been.
By the way, Benny Morris, page 354 of 1948 says that Ben-Gurion was opposed to a Palestinian state. Okay?
When?
This is after the formation. So I'm giving you before and after.
There is no formation of the state. What you're saying the funny thing about what you're saying in 1956, talking about a security arrangement for the West Bank, you realize it was the country of Jordan at that point, right?
So you realize that there's still a discussion going on among Zionists whether they should take over the West Bank, right?
No, because it was Jordan. No.
Yes, there were. Moshe Dayan and Ben-Gurion were both itching for war. There's multiple quotes where they're saying that we should launch a war, and then they eventually do launch the war in 1956 based on the plan that I just told you about right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, because 56 was that was the Jordan River crisis, right? Or wait, that was the Suez crisis. Oh, damn. Do you think they missed? Do you think they threw a dart on the map and they accidentally hit Egypt instead of Jordan there? Or
okay, so do you want to be educated on this? or you want
No,
to keep
I'm
mocking?
good.
So they talked to the British and the French, and Ben Gurion laid out his plan, which involved the annexation of southern Lebanon, getting Jordan involved, toppling the Lebanese governments, and doing what they did in the Suez. And the British and French thought he was crazy when he said this.
They did, yeah, and nobody backed them
Yeah.
for it. Also, you're talking about Lebanon
Yeah.
now, not Jordan. Nobody was going to support them on that. They knew it, and they couldn't handle the demographic takeover of the West Bank anyways. It wouldn't have happened.
You know what David Ben Gurion said? He said, "I know this plan sounds fantastic, but Israel can do fantastic things." And then they eventually fulfilled all of those things in that plan. Now they weren't successful in all of them, but they attempted all of them. In 1982, they invaded southern Lebanon based on law. Now I know you're always going to say, "Well, that's in
yeah, I'm gonna say
not
30
in
years later,
Yeah.
you're gonna Jesus Christ.
because it's part of Zionist ideology of a greater Israel."
That's crazy.
That's
I thought
why.
the thing
That's
is, I thought,
why.
well, because you're
Part of
talking
greater
about
Israel.
Moshe Dan and Ben Gurion. I thought that they were actually inspired by, I think it was Aaron Yeager and Death Note. When did that come out again? And that was what they wanted to do. They thought that they were going to destroy the Marlians and maintain the purity of their Titan bloodline. I thought that's what happened. Or am I mixing up I don't remember when anime started in the Middle East.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I mean, neither do I.
Absolutely no idea.
You can't.
Okay.
When you're talking about history, you can't just jump around like in timelines by decade after decade after decade. I don't know how you could possibly quote things.
Why can't, I'm literally trying to show to you that every single Israeli prime minister has opposed a sovereign Palestinian state. So I'm going through the record, but you keep interrupting using the obfuscation that is your debate bro strategy. Right?
It's not a debate bro strategy. You're the debate bro right now. You're giving me single quotes, which, by the way, I don't even disagree with the premise. Israeli prime ministers have never wanted a Palestinian state because it would stand in the way of them expanding Israel.
You just gave a list of Okay, now I want people to rewind where you said these are where sorry, that's old school, but you know what I mean. They gave a list of prime ministers who accepted a Palestinian state. You're the one who said that, right? You said Omer.
They've accepted.
You said Rabin.
Yes,
you know what
I
Rabin
did. Yeah,
said?
and Ehud Barak.
You know what Rabin said?
What? I wish Gaza would sink into the ocean. Which one? Yeah, which quote do you want to go now? Yeah, I've heard them all. Go ahead.
Okay, you have? Okay. What did he say about a Palestinian state? What did he say about a Palestinian state?
So I don't know. Tell me which one.
He said this to an address to the Knesset in 1995, exactly when the Oslo Accords were. Quote, "We would like this to be an entity which is less than a state." They wanted autonomy. That's it, a Bantustan, and which will independently run the lives of the Palestinians under its authority. The borders of the state of Israel during the permanent solution will be beyond the lines which existed before the Six-Day War. We will not return to the June 4th, 1967 lines. We want a united Jerusalem, Jordan Valley, the establishment of block of settlements in Judea and Samaria. Do you understand what he's saying there? No Palestinian state.
What he's saying is that they don't want to retreat all of the expanded settlements because they had expanded them a little bit past the green line, past the armistice lines of 47, 48. And the biggest thing when Rabin, because every time a Jewish prime minister is trying to negotiate, they always have their backs against the wall at home. So they're always trying to shore up their base at home, while they're also trying to do peace talks with Palestinians who are just doing terrorism after terrorism after terrorism. So yes, they will say things in order to.
There's your standard argument against trying to lean into stereotypes about violent Arabs and Muslims. But
what is the stereotype? What? I'm sorry. Wait, have Palestinians not engaged in like terrorist activity against the state of Israel since they've like existed?
Really? I'm sorry. Didn't Zionists engage in mass terrorism decade after decade? Weren't they successful in their terrorism and they got the British to flee the mandatory region because of that terrorism?
Yeah. The difference is I don't deny it. Yeah, no shit. Of course they did.
So
yeah,
I don't.
But
do you think I'm denying?
But you don't admit. Oh wait. Okay. So then, do you admit that people like Arafat and the PLO literally started as like basically resistance fighter terrorist groups? Yes.
They all resistant. Yes, they were resistance liberation movements, just like
the Jews, just like the Jews in the 40 to 44, right? Thank you. Okay, there you go. Yes, they're all fine. They've all got their reasons to fight. Yes, true.
But when you're trying to portray the Arabs as specifically violent, I'm trying to show you that that's not true.
I'm not saying the Arabs are specifically violent. I'm just fighting against this stupid notion.
Okay.
Because only when I'm arguing against people like you who are like the Arabs welcomed the Jews with open arms and kumbaya. It's not true. They were fighting the whole fucking time.
Well, actually, you have said previously that you said this in your debate with Eddie Liger. You said that Arabs violently rejected the Jews from day one when they immigrated. That's what you said.
Yes. Yeah. They have. Yes.
That is completely false. Okay.
What are you considering day one here?
Day one is day one when they land, right?
What, like out of parachutes? Like it's like they're going to drop in Tomato Town? What is day one to me? I'm just curious.
Okay.
You don't even have a day one because you don't even know any of the dates.
Okay. What are you talking about? Do you know when day one started? 1880s.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So
Okay,
in
thank you. All
1880,
right.
yeah. So I mean, so Zionist intention from day one was to get that exclusive Jewish state. In fact, so this is now from Morris in 1948, page 3. He has a Zionist letter of 1882 that says, "quote The ultimate goal is in time to take over the land of Israel. The Jews will yet arise and arms in hand declare that they are the masters of their ancient homeland." In 1882, there are another two Zionists, quote, "We shall take away the country." Morris, 1948, page 3. Okay, so this is what the Arabs the Palestinians were dealing with when they first came. And they knew it. And that's why they responded when they did. But they didn't respond initially. In fact, the Ottoman Empire even said to them, "We welcome Jews to come to the Ottoman Empire, but please don't just move to Palestine, and you can't break away and have your independent state." Okay. In fact, there's even a letter from Ruhi al-Khalidi, who's related to Rashid Khalidi, the Palestinian scholar, who actually said that we welcome the Jews. He says, "The Jews are a great people and we could benefit from their expertise, wealth, schools, and contacts, but they must acquire Ottoman citizenship and should settle in other parts of the empire, not just Palestine." Meanwhile, how did the settlers, the Zionist settlers, how did they respond to the natives? They responded with contempt. They thought, and this is from Benny Morris, by the way, he says, quote, "Like most European colonists in the third world, the Zionist settlers saw the locals as devious and untrustworthy, as simple, dirty, and lazy. Some mistreated their Arab workers. They looked down upon these barbarians,
Wait, what is that quote from?
righteous
Some
victims."
mistreated their Arab workers for what part?
What do you mean? I'm talking about in the early waves of Zionism, this is how the Zionists treated the indigenous population.
Okay, well, I'm just totally uneducated on that. My understanding was when Jews bought land because of the conquest of Jewish labor, that Jews expelled all of the Arabs from the land they were on. They didn't have Arab people working it. I thought Jews had to work the land that they purchased.
Well, you're exactly wrong because they did want to do that eventually, but not initially. There weren't
Okay.
enough numbers, so they were
Sure.
working. So sometimes
Well,
they
the initial, I
exploited
mean, like the
Arab
first
labor.
two waves, like completely fucking failed, right? Like that one quote that you pulled out of 1880 or whatever. The first two,
Well, because any
aliyahs
quote
basically
that you say,
completely and totally failed.
you always say that's this year, not that year, even though I'm trying to tell you that it's a consistent, near consensus of Zionist leaders for forced transfer, according to Benny Morris. Okay, so
Well, not that none of the early quotes imply forced transfer. And again, it doesn't even make sense to think that they would imply forced transfer. How could you do forced transfer in the Ottoman Empire? It's their country. It's another country. Did the Jews think they were going to like single-handedly destroy the Arab like state? Like what?
the Zionists thought that they could purchase the lands, use different stratagems to kick off the indigenous population off of their lands, and
Yes.
eventually get great power support in order to establish a state. So what's confusing to you?
The idea that they would establish a state or like destroy from within the Ottoman Empire. I don't know what the ultimate machinations were or what they ultimately wanted to do or what their aspirations were. And I'm sure also, by the way, that their aspirations were great initially, but the idea that we would take a quote from a person who has aspirations initially and say this is proof, especially from some rando
I'm not the one doing that. Benny Morris is the one
from the Fifth Jewish Zionist Congress of the year 1889 or whatever, right? The idea that we take that, oh my God, look, that's the plan the entire time because this guy said it. Bro, a lot of people had a lot of great plans for everything. But when it comes down to the actual agreements, when it comes down to actually accepting things, this is kind of where the Arabs fuck themselves because they constantly make the worst choices possible. Like for instance, in 47, like in 40, this is
you're trying to lay the blame on the victims.
You already agreed with me. I'm not. It has nothing to do with laying the blame on the victims. Arabs sucked at diplomacy. They sucked at military, and they sucked at having like any kind of cohesive grand vision, and that's why they kept fucking themselves over and then getting fucked over by the Zionists as Israel expanded into the Middle East. Yeah.
Did Native Americans get effed up? They got effed too, right?
Yeah, they did hardcore.
Yeah,
of course,
they did.
They did,
right? So should we now celebrate that like you are and talk about them in a mocking tone, or should we say that what the European colonists did was wrong?
Who's celebrating them and talking about mocking tone?
You are. Yeah, you
celebrating it. I'm just trying to get the history right. I'm just trying to get the history correct.
You're trying to. Anyone can review what you just said, and what you said is you're mocking them. You're saying that they effed themselves. That's what you said.
I think they made really dumb decisions. Yeah, a lot of natives probably made really dumb decisions too. When the whole conquistadors came over, they tried to bring they're also dumb decisions. But however, I have a lot more sympathy for natives. I know, thank you. Yes. I'm talking about caliphites, please. Okay, I'm sure that I have a lot more sympathy.
What's a caliphate?
Caliphate. I'm sorry, whatever the term is. Okay,
what does that have to do with me? Because
I don't have as much. I don't have as much sympathy for the Arabs of the 1900s as I do for like prehistory, like New World people who had no concept of of like diplomacy. They were being invaded by a whole fucking invading alien
So there's a
army with
whole-
like
there's a
gunpowder
whole
and shit.
literature.
They had a whole, they got killed. 95% of them died of like fucking smallpox. Okay. These people were on a whole
That's-
other level of getting
That's
fucked over
not
by the
true. There's
invaders.
scholarship.
Okay.
There's scholarship on the fact that Native Americans were. That's a talking point of colonialism, that they were wiped. Yes, a big portion of them were wiped off by that, but that's a big talking point, and trying to downplay the ethnic cleansing and genocide that happened by the European colonists.
I'm sorry, what was it? Was it the Minnesiqui Konda was like a secret country here where they had unobtainium and they were crafting weapons against the John Smiths invading? Well, what do you think that the Arabs in the 1900s
Anyways,
were more
let's
prepared to
try
deal with
to
the Zionist invaders than the natives in the like 1400s, 1500s in the New World? Are you telling me that these people both had the same level of preparedness?
I am telling you that they were all indigenous populations that were occupied by the colonial forces, including much of the Middle East. So what's the confusion here?
Do you
The
think
whole world in the
do you think
19th
that they're
century was
comparable?
colonized by Europe? Yes, they're 100%. There's scholarship.
Hold on, wait. You
book
don't think the
streaming on
Ottoman
Native
Empire or the
Americans.
prior caliphates, you don't think that those were imperialist entities or?
Yeah, the Ottoman Empire, right? It's in the name, empire.
Well, empire, not empire.
Yeah, I said empire.
I'm sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't have as much
Okay.
sympathy for an empire.
I know
okay,
you don't have
being like
sympathy
it was
for-
a collapse of empire, but the idea that these people are on the same standing. Why would I compare Arabs in the Middle East to Native Americans?
Because
not
there's
a-
settler colonialism, like it's analogous situation. So you don't want to compare that, just like you don't want to compare Israel to apartheid South Africa, because you know that makes it crystal clear. And you get invited, you visit a country that's committing genocide, you go on a trip. That's the kind of person you are, that you go on a trip to Israel in the middle of a genocide. 50 years from now, people are going to be watching this debate, and you're going to be like embarrassed to be your grandkids watching this and saying you were like one of those people who was defending apartheid in the 1980s. That's why this is important.
Okay.
All right. So let's move on now.
Yeah.
So
let's do the next one. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's actually go to because you have been unable to name a single Israeli prime minister who accepted a sovereign state, and then you backed off of that claim, right? Because you said
Yeah.
that that's not the case.
Rabin doesn't
So-
count because of the quote. Ehud Barak won't count because I'm sure you got a quote from him, right?
It's not just a quote. It's scholars who are writing on it, who are using the quote and other information. That's what scholars do, okay, to
okay.
establish an argument. Okay, and the argument is that they never wanted a full Palestinian state.
Well, now it's
Because
a full Palestinian state, or
yeah, a sovereign state, right? That's what sovereign means.
okay.
Okay. So
and then
now-
in 47
now
when they
you
accepted
said-
the Palestinian
you
state, that
said-
didn't count
you
either.
said
Okay.
you
Uh-huh.
said that it's Palestinian intransigence when it comes to
Do you agree? Wait, real quick. Just do we
yeah,
do we
go
agree
ahead.
that the surrounding Arabs didn't want a Palestinian state either after 48?
So the Arab states were varied on this, and many of them were terrible on this. So Jordan wanted to exploit the situation and expand their territory. So now this is, I guess, a talking point for you, because look how stupid and bad the Arabs are, right? But I'm going to agree with the factual record and say the Palestinians, as the indigenous population, did get screwed. Yes, and the
Okay.
Arab dictators have a huge part to play in this.
Cool. You could just say Arab leaders. We know they're dictators.
Yeah, because Arabs are bad. They're terrible. That's the reason.
I never said
Okay.
that. Sometimes dictators
No,
can
no,
be
no.
based.
No. Okay. All right.
Do you
So-
think dictators inherently bad? That's kind of racist, isn't it?
Okay. So you mentioned Khartoum, right?
Mm-hmm.
You did, right? Actually, so that's another big talking point of
Yeah.
Zionists, where they say that
You're going
in
to talk
this-
about how the three no's that no actually is like yes in Arabic or something, or what are we doing here?
That's funny, right?
Mhm.
So Avi Schleim, quote, "In fact, the conference was a victory for the Arab moderates who argued for trying to obtain the withdrawal of Israel's forces by political rather than military means. Arab spokesmen interpreted the Khartoum declarations to mean no formal peace treaty, but not a rejection of a state of peace, no direct negotiations, but not a refusal to talk to third parties, and no de jure recognition of Israel, but de facto acceptance of its existence as a state," which, by the way, mirrors the exact view of Ben Gurion and Israel towards the armistice agreements. Okay. At Khartoum, Nasser advised and indeed urged King Hussein to explore the possibility of a peaceful settlement with Israel. Quote, "But Israel's leaders feared the new manifestations of Arab moderation and progress towards peace. They therefore deliberately misrepresented the conclusions of the Khartoum summit as the climax of Arab intransigence in order to justify the toughening of their own position. Iron Wall, page 276 to 277. Meanwhile, while you're talking about the 3 no's of the Palestinians, here are the 5 no's of the Israelis, even as late as the 1990s. Israel, quote, clung to the current 5 no's: no to a Palestinian state, no to a return to the 1967 borders with only minor modifications, no to a discussion of the permanent peace settlement, no to withdrawal from the Jordan Valley, and no to a negotiation with the PLO. Israel
wasn't that just like the same thing 5 times?
No, that's not. That's
Okay.
5 different things.
Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, you could say that about the 3 no's too, right?
Would you?
But things only cut. Yeah, the only things cut one way for you. I know that. Okay.
Wait,
so
hold on. No, the 3 no's
Yeah.
for the Khartoum conference were pretty distinct. One was there
Okay,
could
you
be
know what?
no
I
formal
don't-
peace agreement. The 2 is
Yeah.
that they can't negotiate anything, so no economic ties or anything. And then the 3rd was you could never even recognize Israel as a country that you could even do business with.
I'm
There's
not
nobody
going to
even talk
quibble on you because this is a silly point to quibble on.
Okay,
But
I'm so sorry. My bad.
yeah, you
Oh,
should be.
My bad.
Okay. So Israel refuses to deal with the PLO, right? 1970. Let's go to the 1977 Likud manifesto. You always.
Why do they
Zionists always
refuse
think
to deal with the PLO again? We just kind of glanced
Because they-
over that real quick.
Yeah, because they're a resistance organization that uses violence to. I have a question for you. Do you
Mhm.
think that Occupy? Man, do you have to eat while you're debating, man?
They're
It's kind
cookies.
of. Oh,
Mm.
watch out! You can make Qassam rockets out of cookies. You got to be very careful because Hamas has hired the Cookie Monster. You know that, right? Cookie Monster
I'm
and
gonna hire the dude tomorrow. I got it. Don't worry.
Qassam
Yeah.
rockets.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
But Cookie Monster ate all the rockets, so it's like a big thing. But
Okay. What is the Cookie
okay.
Monster? The Iron Dome here, or
the ineffective Iron Dome, yeah. But okay, so
wait? Are you one?
Do
Do you believe
I-
that? You believe the Iron Dome doesn't work? Are you one of those people?
no, I didn't say that it doesn't work, but I'm saying that
oh.
it's not as effective as people imagine it to be. That's what I'm trying to say. And if you want
'Cause of
scholarship
Postal.
on that,
Yes, I know. Don't worry. I read that Finkelstein page.
yeah, because you're the real scholar, and I know Finkelstein is, what is he? He's just a quack.
Compared to
Okay.
Finkelstein, I'm the fucking
Yeah,
grandmaster of the
no,
Harvard
you are.
Library of History.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
I know. As long as you can find Palestine on a map, right? That's all we.
Well, right now, technically, nobody can find Palestine on a map. Actually,
Okay,
you really think
so
about it,
let's-
nobody has ever been able to find Palestine on a
Okay,
map. Funnily
okay,
enough, but
okay,
yeah.
okay. Let's. Yeah, that's funny.
Mhm,
So let's move on to the peace treaties now. Let's go through that. So 1978 Camp David Accords, right? So the Camp
Oh, we
David
were
Accords.
we were gonna skip over the fact that the PLO started off as like a
Well,
terrorist
no, I was going to
resistance
ask
group
you.
against
So I was
Israel,
asking.
and then
So I was asking you a question. Do you
Mhm.
think colonized people have the right to resistance?
yeah, to some
Can they
extent,
use
sure.
violence? Can they use violence?
Well, I mean, it depends on like occupation, depends on the violence, depends on yeah, sure. But
No. Can occupied people use violence to resist their occupation?
you understand that that is such an unbelievable. That's like asking, do you have a right to kill somebody who's a threat to you? We're going to need
Okay,
a little bit more
do
nuance
you-
here, right? Like in general, I would
meanwhile-
broadly agree with the idea. I would
meanwhile-
broadly agree with the idea. Yeah, I'd
Okay,
broadly agree with the
so-
idea.
Okay, so do you also agree with the fact that the PLO used violence that included but was not limited to terrorist tactics?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, do you also agree with the fact that Israel and the United States rejected the PLO's use of violence in total, not just their terroristic violence?
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Okay,
Yeah.
do you also agree to the fact that meanwhile, they both say that Israel has the right to defend itself against the Palestinians, the occupied people?
Well, the PLO was fighting to take back
No.
the West
Well,
Bank, right?
No, what I'm trying to tell you is, like, even right now in the current situation, you
Mhm.
have said, like Zionists, Chumcha that you are, you have said that Israel has the right to defend itself when it was attacked on October 7th, correct?
Yeah, but this is a way different
So
situation. Like,
wait. So you agree with the idea reflexively that the occupying power has the right to violence in its response to the occupied. But meanwhile, you hedge when it comes to the occupied, the colonized, using violence.
in general, the you have to clarify the situations. You're
No,
trying
why
to
is
like
it so-
speak in like
okay.
very general statements here.
Of course, I'm trying to establish a principle, which is the fact that according to international law, which I know even though you're an omni-liberal, you don't care about international law, which is
Okay.
like the epitome of liberalism. But according to international law, the colonized have a
Mhm.
right to resist their occupation by violent means. They can't
Not
target
against
civilians.
civilians.
They
Yeah,
can't
not
use
against civilians
terrorism.
ever. Yeah, okay.
I just said that, right?
Yeah, you did.
But they do have the right to use violence.
Sure, but I mean, like whether
Okay,
or not
so the
Gaza would even count as
the
an occupied
colonizer
territory right now is like a
the
little contentious,
colonizer,
but
we'll get to that, but the colonizer does not have the right to use violence in their occupation because the occupation
the
itself
response
is
to October
invalid.
7th, I'm pretty sure you have a right to use violence
Okay,
against
well, we
against
can
Hamas
talk
there, but
about we can get to that, but I'm trying to
Okay.
understand the double standard that you have.
Okay.
Okay, so
Where did the
now,
PLO go? Where did the PLO
wait, hold
go?
on.
They
The
were
third
in.
point. The
Oh,
third
okay. We're
point
just gonna
now. The
glance
third
over all
point.
that. Okay.
You said why did Israel refuse to? I'm getting right to what you said. Why did Israel refuse to deal with the PLO? Okay, you said it's because of their terrorism. That's what you implied. Now, do
One of
you
the
also
reasons,
agree?
yeah.
But one of the reasons. So, what's the other reason?
Um, well, I mean there were designs or ideas for I think it was from 67 up to when did was it 75? There was a time when Jordan finally gave it up, but there was an idea at Israel that some kind of I think they called it the Jordanian corridor could be created to run the West Bank. And the PLO threatened to undermine both the leadership of Jordan and it threatened to undermine the stability and the security of Israel. So Israel obviously never wanted to negotiate with or recognize the PLO because nobody in that area, neither Jordan nor Israel, wanted the Palestinians to have a separate state because both of them considered it against their interests.
So you were right that the
I know I am.
outside states, Israel and Jordan, did
Mhm.
not want to grant the Palestinian people their peoplehood and nationhood, which they wanted and which is their rights. So
Well, they're
yes, you're
right.
right. They
That's
wanted to
contentious,
undermine.
but
That's the actual reason, not the terrorism reason. And the way we know that is because PLO then said, okay, we're willing not to do terrorism and we're willing not to do violence. And then you know what? So what happened was PLO started becoming pacified. They became accepting nonviolent means. And once they embraced those tactics, did Israel say, oh, that's great. We're happy that you're doing that. Let's talk and make peace. No. You know what they did? They said this is a Palestinian peace offensive. And they said we have to counter this, and this is a huge threat to us. So in 1982, they said, let's destroy the PLO. And that's what they were doing in southern Lebanon. That was the purpose of the 1982 Lebanon War.
how did they get to Lebanon again? Why was the PLO in Lebanon?
Because they got kicked out of their territory, their land by Israel, and then also, yes, by Jordan as well, which is a collaborator in this. So again,
Oh.
Arabs bad. I
Wait, why they
understand.
get why they get kicked out of Jordan?
Because they were resisting. They're trying to resist occupation.
Because they tried to
And
coup
so,
the Jordanian king as well, right?
right, because the
Palestinians also
Jordanian, because he deserved
assassinated the
it.
first
He
Jordanian
deserved
king.
the
Oh,
Jordan.
okay.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Jordanian
everybody has to die who's not giving the
collaborated.
Palestinians what they want. Yes,
Yeah,
true. Yes.
collaborate.
Come
What do
on,
you think?
yes.
Oh yeah, do you think Hamas leaders should die?
I
You
mean,
think a
two
lot
to
of
three
people
of them
should
are
die,
gone now,
right?
right?
You think yeah, that's 40,000 Palestinians are dead too. That you think that's nothing.
Well, supposedly,
So
I mean,
you like yeah, supposedly yeah. It's who knows how many people died, right? Who knows how many people died in the in the Holocaust? Who knows? Let's do all this kind of
not one
denialism,
more, not
right?
one less. Don't worry, I
Yeah.
know that number.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, anyways, so now we've established the fact that it's not the Palestinian terrorism, but it's actually the threat of the state of Palestine, right?
Mhm.
An independent state. So,
Mhm.
because if that was the case, then when PLO said that we're not going to use terrorism, we're not going to use violence, we accept Israel, then you would expect them to say, okay, let's talk. Instead, they said, let's invade in 1982. But let's talk about
You
Camp David
understand that you
Accords
can't. You
before that.
understand that you can't just do like war after war after war after war, and then right after you lose, be like, "But wait, let's try
Who
peace,"
did
right? You can't do that,
okay, so
right?
this is another talking point of yours where you
Mhm.
try to portray the Arab states as waging war after war on Israel, but in fact, again, there's a whole book on this. It's called Defending the Holy Land, in which he shows that virtually all of the Arab-Israeli wars were initiated by Israeli aggression. Okay, and we can go through the record if you'd like.
The 47 war was initiated by Arabs, and the
I just
48 war
told
of
you that it
independence
wasn't. It
was
was done
initiated.
by the Irgun
You
and
told me that
Lehi.
there was a list. That's fine.
It
I
was
don't
by
know.
the
But,
Irgun and Lehi. And
okay.
the only reason Benny Morris is able to say that it's not because he
Mhm.
excludes the Lehi and the Stern gang. He says,
Gotcha.
oh, they don't represent the mainstream Zionism. So he's able to, but he wouldn't do that with the Palestinian side, right? He
And
wouldn't
in
say those are just
67,
extremists, so they don't
that was
count.
started by Israel, right? Just completely
Yeah,
unprovoked. That was
100% that was started by. So let's talk about 1956 first. You're jumping. So let's talk about
okay.
1956. Who started
Oh, I'm jumping.
1956?
Okay.
Yeah, you are.
The French, the
So
British, Israel.
no, oh yeah, it's the French, the British, and Israel, not just Israel. Okay, so fine. I'll agree with you that they colluded with the colonial powers to
Secretly
serve.
colluded. Yeah, they did. Yeah.
They did secretly collude. What's the confusion here? There was a
There's no
secret meeting.
confusion. I agree with you. That's like one of the best examples of Israel being fucking sneaky. They were super hungry,
Okay,
desperate for
but
for
by the
an
way,
alliance in the
actually,
West. So they wanted to do a secret little plan with France and Britain
well, they
in order
wanted
to fight
they
with
wanted to
Egypt
take
and have control over the Suez. Yeah.
Yeah, they wanted to take territory. That's why they wanted the secret war. And the plan that they came up with was southern Lebanon. They wanted to coup the government in Lebanon. They wanted to coup the government in Egypt, and they wanted to collude with Jordan as well. That was their master plan.
They wanted to do that, yeah, but also the surrounding Arab states
But then
also
the
wanted
French
to
and the
destroy
British said
Israel the
no.
entire time
Then
as
the
well.
French and the
I mean,
British,
like, yeah,
so
that's
the
what they're all
French,
fighting about.
so,
Yes.
so the French and the British said no, and they stuck to just the Suez plan. Okay, so they that's the aggression of Israel there, and Israel acted as the aggressor, by the way, for the French and the British. Okay, but before that, by the way, there was the 1949 through 1956 Israel's border wars. You do know that those also were initiated by Israel, correct?
From which years to which years?
1949 to 1956. Do you know what the leading book on this is? I think you should know this.
I don't know what the leading book is, but I do know that there were Fedayeen attacks that had basically
I
been
say that because your favorite scholar has written
Benny
on this.
Morris.
It's called Border Wars. Yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
he's written on this. Okay.
Gotcha.
And so now you have the specific talking point of the Zionists, which is that it was the Fedayeen who started the war. But in fact, the infiltrations, as Benny Morris himself says, 90% of them were non-military and non-violent.
Yeah, there were people just trying to come back after the Nakba, after 48. Yeah. Some of them even got shot and killed by Israeli people that didn't even know they were going to get killed. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Why? Because Israel had a free fire policy in these border infiltrations. Imagine if America adopted a free fire policy on the southern border. I think you might accept that, but they
as long as it's only against brown people, yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Does it extend to Mexicans or is it only Arabs and Palestinians? I don't know.
The really dark skinned ones, yeah.
Okay, so here's Benny Morris, quote, "Through most of this period, there was an Israeli free fire policy toward infiltrators along the border. Soldiers, policemen, and security guards, especially at night, fired at anything that moved." Sounds familiar? It's what they're doing in Gaza right now, but we'll get to that. Okay, so this is what caused the escalation, whereas Egypt, Jordan, and Syria tried to restrain the Fedayeen, and in fact, they were successful in doing so because they didn't want Israel's escalatory policy. Israel had an escalatory policy because they wanted war, because they wanted to gain territory. So Egypt was successful in constraining the Fedayeen. The attacks went way, way down, and then what happened? There was the Gaza raid, right? So Gaza, poor Gaza is being attacked all the time. You can go through the list, and that's when Egypt said, you know what, you're destroying us now, you're attacking us. So then they said, we're not going to do anything about these Fedayeen. And that is what gave the pretext for Israel's escalatory policy. So that's the context. And this is in Benny Morris's Border Wars, if you're interested in that.
Okay.
And it's also in Avi Schleim, as well as in Mao's book as well.
So after the Nakba, after all the surrounding Arab states go to war with Israel, from 48, after 48, after 48, after 48,
went to war,
after they reluctantly asked, yep, correct. After 48, you're telling me that Egypt, Syria, Jordan, all these states where they were trying their best to keep the people that were trying to return, they were trying to keep them back.
Yeah.
But somehow they just kept crossing into the border to try to get back into Israel, and they tried to restrain the Fedayeen, and it just didn't work. You are right that at some point they did. That was probably in response to Israel's retaliatory attacks. That's why that's why they had that policy of reprisal, because the idea was, well, if anybody comes from your border into our country, we're going to come back really hard on you as a way to discourage you from doing it. That's why Israel's entire like early policy was based upon heavy reprisal. It was the idea of discouraging those countries from hosting.
No, it wasn't.
Types of attacks.
It was for escalation to lead to war. Okay, and
Israel did not want a war. No.
Yes,
Israel didn't want a war on their own. No, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
Of course they did.
Morris, Border Wars, page 411. Quote, "A strong expansionist current ran through both Zionist ideology and Israeli society. There was a general feeling shared by such prominent figures as Moshe Dayan and David Ben-Gurion that the territorial gains of the 1948 war had fallen short of the envisioned promised land." This is exactly after, in that time period that we're talking about, 1950s. Border
in
Wars,
that time period, what is the year?
I know, right after 1940.
That's
that is right. Okay, so then they wanted to expand.
I gotta do a little ramble. I'm sorry, because I realize you are like uneducating my whole audience. Okay.
Yes, I am educating
the period from 48
who can defend
to 67.
Qassam rockets out of cookies.
Right.
Yes, I'm educating them.
All right, I'll do my mini ramble. Okay, from the period of 48 to 67. Israel was happy to accept basically any land or any country they had whatsoever because it meant some kind of international recognition for their country. Now, you
I just told
reference
you Benny Morris who
Israel,
said otherwise.
you referenced this, that they had grander designs. Of course they did. They were oftentimes speaking of the rib cage of Tel Aviv. It was just a dozen or so or whatever kilometers from the West Bank territory to the sea, and that they were worried that they didn't have enough territory. But they were like, it's okay. Well, maybe we can get some of the future. Who knows what'll happen? But they were always saying things to assuage the fears and the concerns of Jewish people that felt like they didn't have enough land. So they did have grander designs, but who knows if that would come up or not? They're not sure. But from 48 to 56, there are attacks from surrounding Arab states, but the early Israel is not a super stable country. They have been taking on immigrants from all over the world. Okay, you had one of your first exoduses, one of your first diasporas, because after 48, you've got push-pull factors where Jews are coming from every single Arab country. Okay, now they're fleeing these countries and coming to Israel, and you don't have any formal peace agreements from Israel with any other country as well. The reason why Israel was so motivated in 56 to try to do, no, hold on, you just rambled on so much dog shit history. Okay, so yes,
Oh,
thank you.
yeah.
So in 56, the reason why, the reason why you're not quoting those people, you're quoting.
I literally read them.
Okay. Yes, I'm
I'm quoting them.
It doesn't seem like it. Yes, a quote.
I'm quoting them. Yes, it's called.
I understand.
When you read something, you're quoting them. That's correct.
No, that's not correct. When you've actually read something, you summarize the material and then you present your understanding of the material. A quote is what you do when you've read the Wikipedia of it. Trust me, I know. I'm a Wikipedia expert, okay?
Hold on. Javad, I promise we'll give you a chance to jump in. Let's just give Stephen maybe another 30 seconds.
Go ahead.
Yes. So up through 56, yes, there are Fedayeen, there are some people that are trying to come back, but I think the majority of the people that are trying to come back into Israel are they're basically just Palestinians that were expelled during the Nakba because they want to go back to Israel because they're like, hey, we fucking lived here before, and a lot of them get shot and killed by Israeli soldiers, by the IDF, the newly formed IDF that are there. It's not good. There are also terrorist attacks, though, or there are attacks that are hosted by aggressive Fedayeen from Syria, even from Jordan and from Egypt, of course, because none of these surrounding Arab states are happy at all that Israel is here for understandable reasons. In 56, the big driver, my understanding is the big driver for the Suez crisis is Israel was hungry and desperate to have a Western ally. That's why they went to Britain and France. They're like, oh my God, we can work on this like clever, kooky, crazy plan, and we can all work together because they were looking for security guarantees from the West. You can say that Israel wanted to expand their borders all they wanted, but the Jewish people were smart people, if nothing else, and they knew that there's no way they could just go to war with everybody in the Middle East. The entire world was already pretty pissed off after 48, after the war, after the armistice lines, and everybody's like, hey, you guys are all fucking fighting. What the fuck? Okay, we just got done with World War II. Stop. Okay, and in 56, it was the opportunity to work with two Western countries. From 56 to 67, Israel was terrified. Hold on, no, we won't. No, I will finish right up to 73. Okay, in 67, Israel was looking at their literal worst case scenario. Okay, and it was war potentially with every single neighboring state, okay, because of all of the statements by Nasser, all of the lack of security guarantees from the West, okay, and Israel was genuinely scared. And the idea that in 67 they want to start these wars, they want to do this because they know they can hold this territory. When the rest of the world, after 56, it was the United States that said, hey, you guys need to get the fuck out of the Suez. You guys need to leave Egypt. This is crazy, right? Israel did the 67 war not because they wanted to, not because they knew they would win or knew they'd take so much territory. There were multiple messages sent to King Hussein, to the King of Jordan, saying, hey, stop attacking us from the West Bank. Don't do this. And he ignored it. I believe the quote is the die has been cast. Okay. That's the only reason why Israel was able to take over the entirety of the West Bank. Okay. So no, I reject the idea that up to 67, let me wrap it. Up to 67, Israel was not hungry for war. They were hungry for an excuse for war. Sure, of course, but they desperately needed a security guarantee. The difference is they weren't going to get it unless the Arabs fucked up, which they gladly did over and over and over and over again.
So the point that you miss is that you can try to create a pretext, and even if you can't get the pretext then you generate a fake one, and that's what Israel did, and I'll show it to you right now. So thank you for that.
Fake pretext? Wait, hold on. Talking about?
So I'm going to do it right now. So just give me a chance. Now you had your time. Now let me have my time. So what I'm telling you is that after the War of Independence, there were border infiltrations. According to Benny Morris, 90% of them were peaceful, and it was only that when Israel had a free fire policy that there became much more violence and it started ramping up. The surrounding Arab states definitely tried to restrain them, not out of benevolence, but because out of a strategic interest of not wanting Israel to retaliate against them. Okay, so then what happened? Quote, Benny Morris, Border Wars, page 418. From some point in 1953, the cycle of infiltration and reprisal boded war, something that certain Israeli leaders from 1954 either actively sought or were not averse to. That is in Border Wars. Then Avi Schleim talks about the free fire policy. And then what happened? There was the Kibbutz raid that I told you about, and Egypt responded to that. And they were trying to get pretext for Jordan as well, not just Egypt. So here's Avi Schleim. He quotes an Israeli official who says, quote, if Jordanian complicity is a lie, we have to keep on lying. If there are no proofs, we have to fabricate them. That's the point that you miss. And this is from Schleim, Israel and Palestine, pages 87 through 88, where they need a pretext, but they can even generate a fake one or lie about one because they want territory. That's why they do it. They were seeking a second round of war. He's Avi Schleim, Israel and Palestine, page 85. Dayan actively, deliberately, and deviously pushed for war. For nearly 3 years, he was eager for another go at the Arabs. This was 1953. And by the way, David Ben-Gurion was along with this. In 1954, there was a false flag attack on Egypt. Okay, this is in Yagil Levy, who's another Israeli scholar, in his article Structured Bellicosity, page 422. Quote, an Israeli attempt to discourage Britain from withdrawing its military forces from the Suez Canal by activating local agents who would bomb targets in Egypt, thus creating disorder. Okay, so they had that false flag attack. Then the 1956 war. Ben-Gurion expressed regret for not taking more territory, the West Bank and Gaza. Israel had spurned King Farouk's peace feelers, and so too with Gamal Abdel Nasser, who had initiated
What
secret
was
contacts.
wait, in 54 they did that? What was
Hold on.
that? Wait, what was that
Let me just
about?
finish. I'm getting to the 1956 war. Okay,
Okay.
Benny Wars on Israel wanting war. This is Border Wars, page 85. Throughout 1949 through 54, Cairo's overriding concern in its relations with Israel was to avoid sparking IDF attacks. Page 272. Before March 1955, Egypt generally sought tranquility along its borders with Israel. And then it was only after that raid, that was a disastrous, bloody raid, that Egypt said, okay, let the Fedayeen do. Why should we protect the Israelis? It was the 1954 Israeli false flag operation. And then the fact is of the Fedayeen raids as a pretext. The Egyptians, and here I'm quoting Avi Schleim, the Egyptian authorities had a clear and consistent policy of curbing private incursions into Israel until February 1955, as I told you. Okay. Benny Morris. All right. So let's move on now. So Israel has this escalatory policy, and then eventually it goes to the tripartite aggression in which it colludes with the colonial powers, and that's what leads to the 1956 war. Okay, after the 1956 war, Israel actually has a decade of peace. No Arab states are attacking Israel at this time. Okay, and then what happens? 1967. So you're passing on the Zionist propaganda that Israel was attacked on all sides. That's standard Zionist propaganda. It's called it was a war of no choice. Okay.
Yeah.
So Avi Schleim, Israel and Palestine, page 106. The draft of the 1967 Israeli Annual Intelligence Evaluation, prepared in May, explicitly stated that there was no chance that war would break out in the coming years. Israel then launched a surprise attack on Egypt to start the war. Here's Yitzhak Rabin, who says, I do not think Nasser wanted a war. He knew it, and we knew it, that he didn't want a war. The 2 divisions he sent to the Sinai would not have been sufficient to launch an offensive war. Menachem Begin, another Israeli prime minister, he conceded many years later that we had a choice. We must be honest with ourselves. We decided to attack him. All right. Aggression against so they had aggression against Jordan and against Syria. So let's talk about Syria. So in Syria, there were demilitarized zones because of the armistice agreements. Who was violating the armistice, the DMZs? It was Israel. Israel would take its military and bulldoze Arab homes, more ethnic cleansing, by the way, house demolitions. And they would try to goad the Syrians to shell them back, to counterattack back. And often the Syrians would try not to do it, but there would be pressure to do it because you're doing this ethnic cleansing. Again, it's a similar pattern that we see in history. So this is what was going on. Okay.
Was it really from bulldozing homes?
Yeah, bulldozing homes and taking over the territory.
Okay. I thought Diane's quote. I know the article you're talking about. I think pretty sure Diane was saying they were trying to bait him with like farmers and stuff, but maybe they were ethnically cleansing everybody. Yeah.
No, they're not ethnically cleansing everybody, but they're doing. Well, I guess it's unfortunate that we were unable to get through more of the history, but I just want to reinforce 2 points, which is number one, that no Israeli prime minister or administration has ever offered a sovereign Palestinian state because they can't. That's Labor and Likud agree on this, that it cannot be a Palestinian state. You cannot have a 2-state solution if one side says that you can't have a Palestinian state. That's just obvious. And the way we know this is we can put the shoe on the other foot. Zionists were offered an autonomous homeland in a unified Arab state multiple times, and they refused. Right? They wanted an independent state. So we know that
where was
when
that
we're talking
again?
about a state in the mandatory period. Jordan offered it. The Hashemite kingdom offered it.
They were
the
offered
Syrian-
what, where, and what year?
What's so funny about this? When you don't know something, you should ask and be educated.
I just asked you. I said, who? What
Okay.
were they offered by? By who and in what year?
Okay, I will give you the exact year here. It was in the mandatory period they were offered. I'll give you the exact year. Okay, it was 1934. King Abdullah I planned for a united Jewish Arab kingdom, offer of autonomous Jewish homeland in a united Arab state. Zionists rejected this offer. Noam Chomsky,
What's the
Fateful
name of
Triangle,
this?
page 35.
Why are we citing Noam Chomsky for?
Noam Chomsky is an expert of many.
No, he's not.
Yes, he
On
absolutely
mandatory period. No, he's absolutely not.
You are the expert. You are the expert.
Compared to Noam Chomsky?
Yeah,
What?
compared to the legend Noam Chomsky, you are the expert.
I'm sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
So in
This is
30
a
and
great
36,
number.
in 36,
Wait,
Jordan wanted to
just
move
the second
all the
point.
Jewish people.
No, the
Where
second
were they
point.
going to put these people again? What was the plan
So
to put these people?
The plan was to offer an autonomous homeland for Jewish people. And in fact, autonomous regions for minorities was something that the Syrian Arab kingdom also offered, not necessarily to the Zionists, but they offered it to their religious minorities. Now, the second point, so that's the first point I want to come up with as like kind of bringing it to the conclusion, is that no Israeli prime minister or administration has offered a Palestinian state, and they are opposed to that. And in fact, John Kerry, in the Kerry Initiative, because we could go down the list of these Madustans that have been offered.
Wait, hold on. Can I ask you a quick
Wait,
question?
hold on.
No,
Let me
wait,
just
yeah, no,
finish
wait.
and then-
I'll let you. Wait. Hold on, wait. Look at me. Look at
Yeah.
the camera. You were just about to bring up the Kerry Initiative. No, don't look down. What is the Kerry Initiative?
The Kerry Initiative is what is the confusion about the Kerry Initiative? 2013 to 2014. What's the confusion about it?
What was offered?
What was offered was there was negotiations and they were offering a two-state and what did Kerry say in his leaked audio that came out? Do you know?
I don't know. You tell me.
Well, I'm telling you. So
I'm
you find
asking
this
you. Yeah,
comical.
I'm just curious
Yeah,
how much you can do without reading down at the whoever prepared this document for you.
I prepared it because I'm I'm an academic. That's what I do.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. So what Kerry said in his leaked audio was that the peace process has failed because the Israelis do not want a Palestinian state ever. That is what he said. I could get the exact quote, but you said that I can't look down. So that's best a paraphrase that I can do. And that sums up the entire peace process. Obama came to the same conclusion, by the way. There was some blame on the Palestinian side, of course, because you always have to blame the occupied people as well. But he said overridingly, it's the fact that the Israelis do not want a Palestinian state. Even Hamas, by the way, has multiple times said that we would be okay with a two-state solution, implicit recognition of Israel, not a formal but de facto acceptance, just like the PLO had said decades ago, and then eventually switched.
And
So,
what's the argument for why in 2008? Why did Abbas reject Olmert's offer?
well, there are multiple reasons. Number one is that it was not a sovereign Palestinian state. Number two is that plan has the Israeli military all over Palestinian land. Why on earth would any Palestinian accept that? Number two is that again, you're not allowing me to look at my notes, so that's fine.
No, you
But,
can look. You're fine.
no, it's okay. I can do this. Don't worry. The number two thing is that he didn't let them even share. Abbas didn't say no, by the way. Olmert has said that was not true. Olmert has said, there's a Haaretz article on it, that he didn't say no. He simply said, I need the map so I can show my experts. I'm not a map guy. I need to show my experts and advisors. And what did Olmert say? He said, no, you can't share the map. It's mine.
That's not true. Olmert had set up a meeting with him like the next day, and they
did. That's
and
exactly
they skipped
that's
out.
exactly against
They didn't show up.
No, that's not true.
That is true.
No,
Olmert himself said that. Olmert said that they skipped the meeting.
All right. So let me give you the receipts since
He said that in a conversation with me. I talked to him about that. He literally said that. He said, yeah.
I
have
hope
Ericat. That
this,
was the guy that was supposed to look over the maps, and Abu Mazen just canceled the meeting. It was horrible.
I
Okay.
can give you a chance to respond, Javad, and then we have to go into the Q&A pretty quick here.
Okay.
Like right after.
Gotcha.
Okay, so Olmert initially lies and says he had never heard from Abbas again. Quote, Avi Shlam. Olmert claimed that he had never heard from Abbas again and that the most generous offer in Israel's history would remain without a Palestinian answer. Avi Shlam, page 796. Yet, Olmert's version of events is not entirely accurate. Olmert and Abbas did negotiate subsequently on more than one occasion, far from ignoring the offer the Palestinians requested clarifications, which they did not receive.
We're going to jump right into the Q&A.
In what year?
This was after Olmert's proposal in 2008.
Okay. my understanding is that proposal was walked away from, and
Your
otherwise,
your
they
understanding
really
is
make
Zionist
it.
propaganda.
Oh, my bad. Has there ever been a proposal? Wait, two questions. Two questions. We do Q&A.
Please,
Number one,
please.
has there ever been a Palestinian proposal on the table for Israel to accept?
Multiple times.
Name
Multiple
one.
times. Okay, let's do it. Let's go down the list, shall we?
No. Just start
Okay.
it like start giving
Okay,
one
Arab
around
League
like
peace plan.
2000.
Arab League peace plan, which the
Okay.
PLO endorsed.
Okay, the Arab League peace plan. What did that
Uh-huh.
involve? What was the
involved a
how many
two-state
refugees?
solution.
How many refugees were supposed to come back?
Okay, you tell me. I know the answer. Do you know the answer?
I believe I do. I believe that in the plan they said that it has to conform, I think, to resolution 242, and I think that
No.
the vagueness of it just says that there has to be a just resolution to
Correct.
the refugee plan, and they
Correct.
don't ever
So-
actually call it. You say correct. I'm pretty sure
experts-
that's language from 242, but okay.
So
Yeah.
experts know that is a implicit recognition that it's probably not going to be a repatriation to Israel, right?
Oh,
Because
no, that's absolutely
yeah.
not true.
So then why didn't Israel ask for the clarification then?
When?
Why didn't they engage with the Arab peace plan, which would have normalized relationship with 57 Arab and Muslim states? Why did
the
Israel
Arab
turn that
peace?
away?
First of all, wasn't that in like 2002?
So there were two Arab League peace plans, by the way. Okay, one was. Let me get the exact names for you because oh my God, if I get the name wrong, then you'll
I don't care
you'll
if you
jump
get the
on me.
name wrong. I just
The
don't like jump around a
1981
time list. Yeah.
So there was. Oh yeah, because first you ask for something, then you say you're jumping. First, there was the 1981 Arab League peace plan. This was the first two-state solution peace plan that was put forward, endorsed by the majority of the Arab League members. Israel rejected it, vowing instead to destroy the PLO and launching the deadly Lebanon war. So that's in 1981. That was endorsed. That was PLO was on board with that plan. That's why the Lebanon war happened in the first place. And then there was
there was no attempted assassination or killing of like an Israeli ambassador or anything. There was no violence from southern Lebanon.
Do you know about that? What happened there?
Was it the Mossad that actually killed him?
No, it was not the PLO who killed him.
It was like
Abu Shmidal. Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. They said, I forget his exact name. They said something like, "Oh, it's Abu Shmidal Nidal." Like they don't give a rat's ass who it is because they want to attack Lebanon. So that shows the pretext generation that you're talking about. They said, "I don't care if it's the PLO. It's good enough for us, and we're going to invade." Because what happened was the PLO was refusing to give them the pretext. Israel kept doing its escalatory activity against Lebanon, and Palestinians refrained because they knew what they were trying to do. And so Israel said, "What can we do?" So Sharon said, "Let's just use that pretext, even though we know it's not only non-PLO, they're like enemies. Okay, they had like death sentences against them, like from the PLO side. So that's a pretext generation. And then that's the Arab plan that I'm talking about. And then there was a second plan as well, which is much more recent. That
none of these plans have made clear what
Arab
the right
peace
of
initiative.
return. Yeah, none of these plans have made clear what the right of return would look like. Like,
okay,
there hasn't been a single commitment to an actual number.
So do you think that number one is, do you think that Palestinians have made dramatic concessions on the right of return, or have they been intransigent on this issue like you have said in the past?
I don't think they've ever made a concession on the right of return. That's my understanding.
Okay, so your understanding is incorrect. Okay, and if you had actually watched the debate that you claimed that you watched between Norman Finkelstein and Avish,
I would never waste my time.
Okay, but you said that you watched it, right? But Camp David 2000 demand on the Palestinian side was 10 to 20% of the total Palestinian refugees. Okay, that's in Ben-Ami, Scars of War, page 249. Clinton
they didn't, but the Palestinians didn't accept that.
That's from the Palestinian side.
No.
Yes. Scars of War. Okay. Clinton parameters.
That's not true. They did not accept. Okay. They absolutely didn't. Part of the words of the you're about to bring up the Clinton parameters. Part of the rejection of the Clinton parameters of Tab 7 is literally them saying in the pages, they literally said, why would we ever accept a plan that gives up any Palestinian's right to return to Israel?
This is again a myth. They did accept
literally
in the parameters.
They didn't. They rejected them. We have the papers.
No, they did not. You're wrong. They both sides, Israel and Palestine, said yes, but with reservations.
No, that's not
reservations
true.
Yes, it is. The reservations by Arafat were on the Palestinian side was about a 2-page letter. The one on the Israeli side was about like a 20-page letter. This is, and it was now we have access to it, so you can.
We do. We've read them all. Right.
No, you haven't read
Israel. We've actually read these. You haven't read it. By the way, you haven't read any of these things. If I were to ask you to summarize, what do you think were the rejections on both sides, from the Israeli side and the Palestinian delegate?
I know exactly what they were. Okay, so when it comes for the Palestinians, they did not reject anything. They asked for clarifications. So they said that we need to know they were talking about land swaps. They said, well, what land swaps? Where are the land swaps? They needed clarifications on Clinton's vague parameters. Again, Clinton, a superpower, just imposing these restrictions, take it or leave it on occupied people, I think seeking clarifications. And not only that, Arafat said, I'm willing to go to you right now and meet you. It wasn't like Stonewall.
After jerking off for 2 weeks. Yeah, that was the point. The Israeli delegation had already accepted the Clinton parameters, essentially. Now, the only parts where they quibbled were that some parts of the Clinton parameters said that this is the percentage of land that would be swapped, and the Israeli delegation was like, well, how could we swap this if we have this? Like,
That's
a couple
not
of these things
true.
don't seem to work. That is true. I've read these entire things before. Okay. And on the Palestinian side, after Arafat hopped on a jet, he flew all over the world, and everybody has said as much. After the time had expired by, I think, weeks to accept this, he sent a letter back saying, like, oh, well, of course I'll accept these, but obviously I need to know like what this or that or that or that means, whatever. He didn't accept anything. In classic Arafat manner, he didn't agree to a single thing. He said he needed clarification on everything, and he was already delayed in his response, and everybody knew that he was never going to accept it. He didn't accept anything.
Okay, here's from the letter. Okay, you ready? Are you ready for this? I know, quoting the letter that you yourself cited from Israel. Let's see what they said, okay? They said, it states, quote, the permanent territorial arrangements would have to include annexation that exceeds the numerical territorial scope indicated by the president. So number one, we need more land. Okay, how much land? We're not saying we're going to have more. Wait, hold on.
No, wait. Can you just let's just focus on something? Can you read that quote again? Read that quote again and tell me what you think it says.
No, I'm not going to reread it again.
No, read the quote. That quote, all you're doing is proving my point to anybody that's literate. Yes, they're saying that based on what's in the Clinton parameters, if you want us to have this thing, it's exceeding the total scope of what you said we're supposed to transfer. It's not possible. These were the only
they're
Israeli.
saying that they want more land.
No, they're saying that it doesn't work, that the Clinton parameters had a little bit of contradictory stuff, and so they have to figure out like what they mean here. But they accepted basically in good faith that it wasn't.
Okay, so hold on, let me just give my side, and then you can give your side. Okay, so number one,
you're supporting my argument.
Okay, yeah, sure they are. Okay, so number one is they wanted more land. Number two, quote, in the field of security, the presidential ideas differ from the Israeli ones with regard to the Palestinian police and security force, the mandate of the international force, and the monitoring of the non-militarization of Palestine. In other words, they want more Israeli presence. Number three, it also calls on Clinton to remove any ambiguities in his parameters per the right of return of the refugees. That is, quote, any entry of refugees to Israel shall be a matter of sole sovereign Israeli discretion. So on all three key issues when it comes to borders, security, that's sovereignty, and refugees, they don't accept the Clinton parameters. So they said yes, but we don't agree with these three major things. So for you to say
that's not what you just read. That's like you just I don't know what to. That's I'm not even sure. Yeah, geez.
Yeah. Okay.
This would be a great opportunity.
Okay, go ahead. So meanwhile, as far as Arafat, he agreed to no right of return and was just seeking to get refugees accepted into the Palestinian state.
Not.
Yes, he only wanted
Clayton Swisher agreed to no right of return. It's such an unbelievable statement.
You can read it in page 400, expressing his concern that
page 400 of what?
Can I finish?
Clayton Can you tell me what you're reading out of, please? If you're going to live in quotes, at least. Yeah,
okay,
page 400 of what?
Swisher's book.
No, I don't. What's that called?
That's literally on the Camp David Accords. It's the most famous book on this issue.
Okay.
Gotcha. So, all right. So,
and he says that Arafat gave up the right of return.
So he wanted the right of return only for the Palestinian state, which is like giving it up from Israel, which would risk its demographic nature. Correct?
There's no shot that Arafat ever agreed to this, but
okay, all right. So yeah, you don't know what you're talking about.
Clearly not. Yeah.
So that's number one. So he just wanted reassurance that it wouldn't be under Israel's prerogative that Palestinians could return to the Palestinian state. Number two, Clinton said 94 to 96% of West Bank with 1 to 3% swaps. Arafat reasonably asked, which land are you talking about? Number three, period of Israeli withdrawal he thought was too long because he feared that Israel would renege like they always do and entrench themselves. So he simply asked for clarification. Is the period you're talking about one of the fixed parameters or not? Those were the major points. He agreed to immediately meet Clinton to get these clarifications. So now you can weigh both sides and you can make your assessment who had the greater reservations. To me, it's clear that the Israeli side had much greater reservations, whereas the Palestinians are willing to give up their right of return, which is like, I would never give that up, but they are willing to give that up.
Actual, like, you can read both, like, the reservations. I think it's like a 22-page PDF. I don't know why you would have to read somebody else's summary.
That's for the Israeli side. That's not the summary that I read. That's my notes that I read to you.
Oh, it sounded like you were just reading from Clayton Swisher. I don't know why we'd read his summary.
Clayton Swisher was the citation for an expert in the field. I don't
You don't need an
read-
expert. Dude, you literally just
I do.
have the
Yeah, I
document.
do.
They just have the
No, no,
PDF.
no.
Like you just
No, I
read what
don't. No,
the
no,
Israeli
that's not what
reservations were.
scholars do. That's not what scholars do. The
Oh, my
scholars read
bad.
both the
They
primary
selectively quote,
and the
yeah.
secondary sources. Okay.
Okay. Gotcha.
This
Okay.
might be a
And
great
the number.
opportunity. Let's jump into
Can
the
I just say
Q&A.
that? Yeah, go ahead.
Want to say a couple of quick housekeeping things. First, we were very excited. Tiger King, this is for real. The audio might not be perfect tomorrow. I want to give you a heads up. It'll be a 15-minute call. It will be for real, though. So we're excited about that. Destiny versus Tiger King on Trump versus Harris. You don't want to miss it. Check it out tomorrow. It'll be live. And that's 4 p.m. Eastern. With that, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your patience. We're going to jump right into these questions. Yeshua the King says Palestinians are the most privileged, oppressed group. Why? Because I don't see anyone marching or speaking out for North Koreans, a true open air prison.
Whose question is that for? I'm assuming that's for me, but
Either of you can respond if you want.
so as Norman Finkelstein says, you can't predict which issue in the world is going to attract the attention of people. For example, it was in the 1980s South Africa, and defenders of apartheid South Africa would always do whataboutism and say, what about all the other terrible regimes in Africa? Look how big bad, look at the neighborhood we live in. Exactly arguments that Destiny has raised in the past about Israel and Palestine. So you can't predict that. But this is standard whataboutism. As far as the differential, as far as support, I mean, there's not even any comparison. Historically, Israelis have had the support of very powerful factions, a very powerful Zionist lobby, which influences actual policy. And just now, in the last few years, you have awareness, and unfortunately, it's taken a genocide to really create this momentum, and I hope that it continues.
So coming in from, any thoughts, Stephen?
No, not yet.
Muhammad says, Dr. Javad, let's see. He says he's a fan. Jordan says, hey, gotcha. Muhammad says, got that. Looking for more sincere questions rather than insults. History Speaks says, in the birth of the Palestine refugee problem, page 28, Morris notes the Yishuv planned to deny citizenship to 45% Arab minority to make it easier to potentially expel them in the future. So Destiny is wrong on Yishuv accepting Arab minority.
What was I? Say that. Re-say that.
Now he's going to be confused.
They said, in the birth of the Palestinian refugee problem, so the book, they say page 28, Morris notes the Yishuv planned to deny citizenship to the 45% Arab minority to make it easier to potentially expel them in the future. So Destiny
The point is they never
wrong.
accepted them as the 45%. That's the point. And History Speaks, by the way, you blocked him. You should unblock him, and you should actually debate him on this topic. He's an actual
let me
academic.
finish History Speaks' super chat, though. They say, so Destiny is wrong on Yishuv accepting Arab minority. Thoughts, Stephen?
I can't argue with a single quote. I don't know what I'm supposed to like.
It's an academic
like,
who's made a
the
conclusion.
Yishuv, like the like it. I would also need to know the year at which this was said because it dramatically changes. Like how would you interpret a particular thing? Also, I was curious. I bought this the book over the Camp David stuff because I was curious. Which page did you say it said that Arafat agreed that refugees could come back, but only to the because in his letter to Clinton he doesn't say that.
Okay, let me. Well, what does he say about it? Tell me.
I have many questions relating to the return of refugees to their homes and villages. I have a negative experience with the return of displaced Palestinians to the West Bank and Gaza during the interim period. Because the modalities remained tied to an Israeli veto, not one refugee was allowed to return through the mechanism of the interim agreement, which required a quadripartite committee of Egypt, Jordan, Israel, and Palestine to decide on their return. So it seems like he's explicitly not saying that he accepts them not being able to go back into Israel.
You're right that he's not explicitly saying it, but he is implicitly accepting the idea and just trying to get that in the West Bank and Gaza. Correct? Do you accept that, or is that too far a stretch for your brain to understand?
No, he's explicitly not accepting it.
Okay. He's trying to. He's saying, "How do I know?" Because the Clinton parameters were that the bulk of the entire point of the Clinton parameters is that the refugees are supposed to go to the Palestinian state, and any resolution should not threaten the demographic of Israel. So, did he counter any of that? Did he say he has any problem with that?
He didn't agree to anything.
he's seeking clarification on what the Clinton parameter is
Yes,
stating.
but he didn't agree to anything.
So
Arafat is
said
always
yes.
seeking clarification, even quoting your own
Okay.
author.
Ooh,
He
no,
says
I know-
that, as
I
with
know
any other contract or important binding document affecting the fate of nations,
because
it's unconscionable for either the Palestinians or the Israelis to make any commitments to Clinton's guidelines without having the clearest understanding of all the terms presented. So this idea
both
that
Israel and
that
Palestinians,
Arafat
yes.
accepted any of this was not
Okay.
true. It wasn't true.
Okay.
Thank you.
All
Thank you. I agree.
All right.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So
Keep
coming
going.
in from, do
Okay,
appreciate
now
it.
the next question.
The globalist says, yo,
Oh, but you didn't
To
respond
be
to
clear,
History
you said that he
Speaks.
accepted
You
it.
didn't
He didn't
respond to
accept it. You
History
lied about
Speaks.
that, right? Yeah.
No, I did not. I told you what Clayton Swisher has, like a scholar, has understood about it. So number two is.
But you didn't say that he accepted
Okay,
no refugee. Okay.
You're literally trying to run away from History Speaks. That's what you're trying to do. You block the guy. You should debate him. He'll talk to you about the kill ratio thing that you've obsessed
Gotta
over.
go
No,
to
I'm
this
good.
next
I don't.
question.
Talking to fake scholars
This
is
one-
already like driving me insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is from the globalist says, yo, mask just lifted there on Dr. Hashmi. Of course, the Arabs would want genocide. Is what he just said meaning he thinks they did try to genocide us? Why does he complain?
I never said that. I said the exact opposite, that this is every accusation, Zionist accusation is Zionist confession. Because historically, by the way, Muslims and Arabs have not engaged in the pogroms and the mass slaughters and forced conversions that were the case in Europe. And anti-Semitism is unfortunately a modern phenomenon that is unfortunately a large response that doesn't justify it to the conflict. And as soon as you resolve this conflict, you'll see that things improve. So this kind of blinkered view that you have of Arabs and Destiny has this. He has the view that you can't have a one-state solution because if you have the one-state solution, the Arabs are going to slaughter the Jews, just like the South African whites said we can't extend the right of voting to blacks because they will slaughter us. So that's just historically untrue.
Do you think that a two-state solution is unfair? Would you reject all two-state solutions?
I do not reject all two-state solutions, but the problem is that there's a contradiction in Zionism whereby they can't really accept. So it's the paradox which we see.
Well, sure, no, but I'm asking. Let's say tomorrow there was like on the
Yeah.
table there was a two-state solution that would go back to the '67 borders. It'd be a full independent Palestinian state. They'd even get their highway or underpass to connect the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Do you think that would be a fair or acceptable resolution?
I mean, fair or acceptable, I would say it's acceptable. And I would say, given the circumstances, it would be, like I said, acceptable, and I would accept it. As far as fair, I mean, history was not fair on the Palestinians.
Okay. And what do you think should be done about the division of like Al-Aqsa Mosque?
But
Do you think Jews should still be allowed to pray at the Western Wall?
Well, I think if you're going to go for rest everything you have on the UN partition plan that was non-binding, the only binding one that Destiny wants, then you should also
have to be binding.
No, every time that a General Assembly resolution is brought up in other situations, then you say they're non-binding. You said that in Lex Friedman in debate.
It depends on the context of the thing. I mean, like, it doesn't matter.
If it's pro-Zionist,
it doesn't matter.
Zionist, then it's binding. If it's against the Zionists, then it's non-binding.
Zionists don't care. Zionists wipe their ass with UN resolutions. They don't matter. They don't do anything in this region of the world because the Arabs don't respect them. So why would the Jews?
entire Israeli state is based on that resolution. So don't say that, okay? Number two,
No, the
entire
state is
Zionist,
based on war. But
I agree with you, but
Thank
the
you.
entire
Okay, cool.
justification, the pretext for it is that General Assembly resolution. Anyways, and that's why you defend that narrative to the tilt. Now, to answer your question, according to that resolution, Jerusalem was to be an international city. And so I agree that something like an internationalized region could be, but that's not something that's
fine. Sure.
I'm
International
about,
city where Jews
I'm
are
about,
allowed to worship in the
I'm
Second
about-
Temple, in the Temple Mount.
I am about religious freedom and maintaining religious liberties for people. And so this is not something, to be very honest, your question, I'd have to really think about it. I haven't thought about it.
This one coming in from, do
If
appreciate
that's
your
okay with you.
question from History Speaks says the HOLO cost began summer 1941 and ended in 1945. Zionist terrorism against the British in 1939 to 1940 and 1946, e.g. bombing of King David Hotel, was not just about immigration restrictions during the Holocaust, but about opposition to Jewish state.
Correct.
Any thoughts?
It was a response to the 1939 white paper.
I think it's amazing
So-
that the mentally disabled can participate in online donation stuff, on watching their favorite streamers. I'm happy for them. I'm championing them. I'm clapping
We
for
should
that.
go
So-
to the next one. I'm sorry.
So wait,
History Speaks.
just one thing I want to say, one sentence, which is Arabs and Palestinians are to be chastised because they supposedly rejected, which they did, the UN partition plan of 1947. And the entire Nakba is justified on that basis and whitewashed by destiny. But on the other
How
hand,
did I whitewash?
when Zionists, you did whitewash. I'll show you how
Yeah.
you whitewashed it. You tried to downplay. You said only 10 to 20,000 people fled, were expelled. So
It was like
I have the
700,000. What are you
receipts.
talking about?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what is the receipt? When did I say 10 to 20,000? What?
Okay. I come with receipts, my friend. So,
Okay.
but wait, let me finish my second
My
point.
bad. Yeah, go ahead.
Which is that, but on the other hand, so Arabs and Palestinians are supposed to be condemned for their rejection of that partition plan. But on the other hand, when Zionists respond with terrorism and violence and killing, throwing bombs in markets, cafes, buses, blowing up hotels, killing police officers, assassinating ambassadors, when they do all of that in response to the white paper of 1939, not a peep.
I don't know who said there's not a peep, but I guess not. Okay.
Okay. And then I'd like to show the quote that you say.
Yeah.
All right. Down.
Oh, I already know what he's about to quote. You're about to quote me giving the number of people that I think fled because their cities or villages were being directly attacked, as opposed to people that fled because they were worried about potential attacks.
Here's your quote. Here's your quote.
go
You're
ahead.
right.
Yeah.
And then I'll give a response.
I know, yeah, okay.
Quote, it was like, I'm glad you should know what you say.
I do.
Quote,
I remember most of
it
it,
was
yeah. Believe it or not.
okay. I mean, when you motor mouth, but anyways, quote, I take that
Why do you
back.
call
Sorry,
yourself a
I
PhD when you're
shouldn't-
still a candidate? Isn't that like against the rules or something? Like if you haven't defended a thesis yet, are you allowed to call yourself a doctor?
I'm a physician. That's why I'm a doctor.
Oh, fuck. Okay, never mind.
Okay. And I
You
apologize.
got me on that one.
I shouldn't have I shouldn't have said motor mouth. I apologize. And by the way, I do think that it's impressive how you debate. I think you're pretty remarkable from that standpoint, and good luck with your debate coming
Thanks.
up.
It's the cookies that get me in.
Okay. So this is your quote. It was like 20,000 people or 10 to 20,000 people who were driven from their homes. The rest left because they were worried about violence, but not 700,000. They were not driven from their homes. This is in your debate with Omar Badr, mark timestamp 3900. And here is the response. Okay. The response is, first, British Middle East Office issued a report in August 1948. Quote, the initial difficulty of persuading the Arabs of Palestine to leave their homes has been overcome by Jewish terrorism and Arab panic. Morris, Birth, page 40. Okay. And then more clearly, Benny Morris, quote, there is a clear chronological one-to-one correspondence between the Jewish offensives and the flight of the bulk of the population from each town and district attacked. Plan D, it accorded the Haganah carte blanche to completely clear vital areas of Arab population. Most villagers fled before or during the fighting. Those who stayed put were almost invariably expelled. Birth, pages 592 to 593. So the point is, they didn't, you tried to portray it as it was just the violence, they were scared of violence. No, it was Jewish Zionist terrorism that they were fearful of because the Zionist terrorism was intended to create that panic and cause them to flee, including they used to use loudspeakers with crazy sounds and noises to try to create fear and havoc.
You're restating what I said. Yeah.
Okay.
There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of, you literally just said at the end. Yes, that's what I said. Yes.
Imagine if I said, well, actually you did it, so I don't need to imagine it, that, oh, the Native Americans weren't ethnically cleansed. Do you think the Native Americans were ethnically cleansed?
I don't use ethnic cleansing prior to 91. I think it's a really silly concept to try to
So before
retroactively.
1990, no one was ethnic. So what happened to the Native Americans? What do we describe that as?
I don't like the term genocide. I just think
I didn't say
feels
genocide.
weird
I said ethnic. Do you know the difference between ethnic cleansing and genocide?
Well, yeah, but if you know the difference between ethnic cleansing and genocide, you wouldn't describe what happened to the Native Americans as ethnic cleansing. I think you would describe it as a genocide, no? If you're going to use one of the ethnic cleansing, theoretically, if you want to apply it, I think it technically just means you're removing somebody from a particular piece of land just based on their either ethnic, national, religious,
acts of ethnic cleansing and acts
Might
of
be.
genocide when it came to the Native Americans.
We'll jump to the next one. Even lore, it says, if the Israelis didn't like the party members of the Third German Empire, why did they recruit them into the Mossad and other intelligence groups?
Because they were the real Nazis the whole time. They needed somebody to help them plan 9/11.
This one from Even Lore, it says, Mr. Bonnell, why did you blacklist? Let's see.
I think we should
Not
stay
really
away from
pertinent, Even Lord. I
words,
just want to. Thomas.
Even if it's against destiny. Don't.
What was it, Javad?
I mean, we shouldn't do the ones that are just insulting either me or him.
I don't understand. it's not even insulting. I don't understand. They claim that Stephen blacklisted Mr. Wilson, um, but
Andrew Wells said yes, because the guy's a little insane and unhinged. He just does weird personal attacks all day. Yeah.
they say, let's see. Will you apologize, Stephen, for inciting hatred on and violence on X? They think that you're inciting hatred and violence on X.
Well, if I am,
I
then I'm
wouldn't
sure they'll
even.
ban me for it.
I
This
wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I don't.
this
I don't know the
one,
proof of that, but
this one from Thomas D says, Mr. Bargadel, do you think the Palestinians would show as much restraint as Israel if the roles were reversed?
uh, well, I all I know is
You're not
uh.
Mr. Bargadelli. That was for Steven.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't know
No,
which
that
you
has to
said. I
be a
was like,
question
what do
for
you
him.
say?
That should be a question for him. Yeah.
No,
Okay,
no, go ahead
John.
if you okay, but yeah. So this is a point that Destiny has made, and this is a Sam Harris reverse scenario. What if Hamas was in control? They would want a genocide. These are what ifs, counterfactuals. Well, Hamas wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Israel's occupation, ethnic cleansing, and now genocide. All these factors, occupation, these things. So these kind of counterfactuals are silly. What I do know is that according to Benny Morris in his book 1948, we can just compare who had the greater atrocities during the war. In the 1948 war, according to Benny Morris, there were only 2 or 3 Arab massacres. Did the Arab states come in? Did they massacre? They did conquer some towns. Did they massacre people? Did they kill civilians? No. In fact, when the Arab states got involved, he says that they actually did follow the Geneva Conventions mostly, and that the massacres all happened more on the Jewish side. This is Benny Morris who's saying that. And this is in the conclusion of 1948, in his book 1948, that the Arabs, the Zionist side had more massacres, they had more rapes, and they had, of course, more ethnic cleansing. That's what they
If
did.
the Arabs, so do you think that the Arabs thought that the Jews in 48 were going to massacre and kill all the people that fled? That's why they fled, because they were so worried about it? Or do you think that those fears were probably largely overblown?
No, they were not overblown. There was the Dar Yassin massacre. There were several other massacres that occurred that you're not going to, when you have kids, you're not going to take a chance and say, right, that's what those kind of massacres are designed to invoke, right?
Why do you think in 67 they were like, fuck it, we're not going to run this time? And they didn't actually all run from the Gaza Strip or the
Well,
West Bank?
okay, well, that's a great question, actually. So, after and so, for example, in the current Gaza crisis, the reason why Egypt closed down the border was because the Palestinians and everyone knows that now they now know from Israel's practice. Because in 1948, when they fled, they thought they could come back, but Israel has created a pattern where once you leave your land, you're never allowed back. Even if you're a citizen, I mean, a resident in Jerusalem, for example, you leave, you go to study abroad, they will strip you of your residency. Like this has happened on multiple occasions. So that's the reason why after this pattern was established, Palestinians are much more resistant of fleeing and giving up their land because of
Yeah. So in
Israel has a
67 they
policy
didn't
of
flee,
not
yeah, because
creating. But
they
there
weren't
was
sure
a,
able to come back, but they also
you
didn't
know,
think
there
they
was
were all going
another
to be
ethnic,
massacred and killed, right? That's why
there
they
was
didn't
another,
flee in
you don't
67.
know that there was another ethnic cleansing in 1967 called the Nazca?
From
Naksa,
which
sorry,
regions? From where?
from the, this was in the West Bank
How many people
and
fled
probably
from
in the
this one?
Gaza too. There were a few 100,000. I can give you the exact number.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So the 1967 Nazca, um, uh, and by the way, this was by Israel's third prime minister who said in 1967, the same problem was present, how to get rid of all these Arabs. He said in a closed meeting, quote, I want them all to go, even if they go to the moon. That's the Israeli policy.
Wait, why would you describe what's going on today as a second Nakba then? Wouldn't this be the third one?
You could say that,
Okay.
but
Thanks
they
for
gave
coming
another
in,
term
Tom.
for it.
Do appreciate it. Thomas D says, is it a fact that Jews, I don't know what this refers to, is this something inappropriate? The globalist says, please,
Let's not do this.
can we move to the current conflict and not the formation because the current situation is Enlightenment values versus Shoddy Islam? Please debate why Hamas is being legitimized versus IL.
IL, is that not Islamic? Is that Islamic law? I'm talking about international humanitarian law. That's what I'm talking about. So I'm not an Islamist. I'm a proponent of international law, unlike, unfortunately, Destiny. He doesn't think international law is important. He stated
It's
so
not
much on
true,
the
but
Lex
okay.
Friedman
Yeah.
podcast. Well, you said that on the Lex Friedman podcast. You said
I
that.
never said that.
So actually, it's Israeli policy that
Mhm.
we don't want to go to international bodies for a resolution. We want bilateral negotiations, which means lopsided negotiations between a powerful party and a weaker party. So this is actually not a coincidence that people like Destiny. You did say that. That's why Moeen Rabbani responded so eloquently to you. Do you not remember when he said
No,
to you about the law of the jungle and your view? You don't remember that?
no, I don't remember a lot of what he said. It was pretty crazy because I had an insane dude screaming at me, some crackhead across the table for the entire time.
He wasn't
Punk.
even addressing you. And by the way, I'd like to thank Norman Finkelstein for answering my emails over the years. And
All right,
I know
that's
that he
come
didn't
on.
want
We
to
can talk
debate
about
you.
your friend Norm later. Punk Giver says, "Don't care about Palestine or Israel. Give us the kingdom of Jerusalem back. Call the Pope." This one from
Christ.
Panda Boom says, "Javad. Arab states already sent volunteers to fight Jews in 1947. See ALA in quotes. Lahi and IZL didn't start the war. They escalated in response to Arab attacks with more than 70 Jews killed in week 2."
That is 100% not true. The Lehi and Irgun attacks, the Irgun terrorism started virtually immediately after the UN resolution. So it's completely not true. The ALA took a few months to come in. I think it was even in the beginning of the year, next year. So I can get you the exact date if you want, though.
Even Lord says for both, what is the problem of an ethno-supremacist nation state defeating and expanding against their neighbors and rivals? I believe might makes right.
That's Destiny's viewpoint.
True based.
This, this one from Thomas D says, who wins in a fight, Israel, Eren Yeager, or Light? What does this mean?
Does Light have his death note or not? Who knows?
The Globalist says, I think they're trying to gouge you. They say, Mr. Hashmi is pure propaganda, does not discuss how we get to peace, justifying the genocide of Jews because something happened
That's a
years
genocide of.
ago. How do we get to peace with Hamas and terror?
Well, that's a great question. So there's not a genocide going on right now against Jews. If there was, I would stand up against it. I try to be principled in my stances. But right now, there is a plausible genocide being committed against the Palestinians, and I definitely oppose that. And so that's the real genocide. As far as how we get to peace, I'm a supporter of the one state binational solution. And I recommend reading on this for those who are interested. The book that shifted me on this, because I used to be a resolute two-stater, is it's called One Country. By Ali Abu Nima. That really shifted, and really all that amounts to is giving everybody under Israeli control, which is already a one state, equal rights and democracy, and that's what a liberal should actually support.
You got it. This one from I says Destiny has to resort to trolling. And they say when he gets outclassed, they say constant is just, they say, yeah.
Oh,
Even
not
Lord
true.
says Destiny joking about cookies like Nick Fuentes. Heck. The globalist says he needs to stay in the past. The present is Jihadi Islam, and he cannot admit that. The current fight is the Muslim Brotherhood's Hamas versus Islamic law.
The present conflict is a genocide being carried out by Israel.
This one from Panda Boom says Javad Gurion's quote, I gotta be saying that wrong, in 47 through 48 about not accepting 45% of Arabs in Israel is false. He referred to future Jewish immigration to build a stronger majority and not about kicking the Arabs.
So you're telling me that he issues a statement 1 month before Plan Dalit, and you're saying that there's no connection. So what you have is a consistent collection of quotations such that Benny Morris has said there is a consensus or near consensus on forced transfer, which is ethnic cleansing, and it goes all the way up to Plan Dalit, and we're saying that there's no connection. Okay.
This one coming in from L says, we got that one. Boom says, Javad, Israel isn't occupying the West Bank. UTI, Poseda, Posed, Posiditas Juris, in international law means new states inherit territory and borders from the former power, parentheses, British. Appeals to majority or the ICJA opinion are fallacies.
Okay, so this is a good question that he asked because Destiny in the past has said that it's not sure if they're occupied territories. When he's talking about apartheid, um, he tries to say that they're occupied because then he says that apartheid doesn't apply, even though he's wrong because the example that he always asks, is there any ever an occupied territory where they use the term apartheid? Yes, it was literally when it came to South Africa. South Africa occupied Namibia. So they made sure that when they wrote the convention, they said Southern Africa instead of South Africa to make sure to include apartheid in an occupied territory. So that argument that you spent so much time goes to the wayside. And then on the other hand, on other instances, Destiny will say he's not sure. It's a maybe disputed territory. So which is it?
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Oti Yolti, Oi Ulti says, I recently started to investigate this. Long story short, Zionism came out of nowhere and started taking people's homes and killing Palestinians. In America, we bear arms to make sure that kind of bullshit doesn't happen to us.
Well, I mean, that's a very oversimplified way of looking at things, but broadly, I would say it's correct that for the Palestinians, you had these Zionist settlers coming out of nowhere and wanting to take away their homes. And I think Americans would fight back. Like I think Cenk Uygur said to Destiny, he's got a gun in the back. I think he would also want to fight back and, have liberty or death.
This one from Tim Owen09 says, Destiny, will you please watch Mr. Anderson versus Dr. Dino debate? Okay. Mikey P says, question for Javad. You said, quote, Chamsha, am I saying that right? In reference to Destiny. I was wondering what that meant. I couldn't find what it meant.
It means spoon.
You got it?
It's a word that we use for somebody who's uh, a propagandist.
Oi Ulti says, thanks for the platform, guys. Thanks for your kind words. They said, I'm personally sad for innocent Israelis born into this. I know they've never asked for this fighting. Jupiter Darman says, hi, Destiny. Hi, James. Love you. Thanks for your kind words. I'm sure they love you too, Javad. Boredom says, does Dr. Hashmi acknowledge the history of animosity against local Arab Jews in Palestine pre-1880s, manifesting in pogroms like the looting of Safed, Hebron pogroms in 1834, and the pogroms of Safed in 1838?
So, as a scholar of religious studies and of religious violence in particular, I would follow what the experts say on this issue. And so historically, there have been two viewpoints. The first is what's called the lacrimose theory of Arab-Jewish relations, which is unfortunately the one that Benny Morris endorses, and so Destiny has also endorsed it, which is the idea that Arabs and Muslims have always oppressed Jews just like they did in Europe. And this is a Zionist propaganda trope that Jews have been oppressed and kicked out of everywhere and persecuted. So that's the lacrimose theory, but experts don't really accept that viewpoint anymore. The counter to this is the extreme on the other side, which is the convivencia viewpoint, which is that it was always a golden period and Jews never had it better and it was amazing and awesome. I take the balanced approach, which is what the mainstream scholarship does. And if you want to read a book on this, I'd recommend Mark Cohen's book, which is Under Crescent and Cross, which compares the treatment of Jews in Islamic lands historically with those in the Christian West. And he concludes that the treatment was far better when it comes to the Jewish lands, even though, look, it's not going to reach the level of tolerance that we're talking about or demanding in the modern period. If you want to read more on that, you can also read Avi Schleim's work on that, Three Worlds, which is related to Israel and Palestine specifically, and Norman Stillman's work on Arab-Jewish relations. So there's a lot of scholarship on this. So what I would say is, although you can point to specific instances in the broad stroke of things, the Jews were not a beleaguered minority. They were not specifically targeted in that way that the caller is trying to say.
There's a from watching, says in parentheses. They say, Dr. Javad, how prevalent would you say anti-Semitism is in the Muslim community? And do you want Jews to become dhimmis?
I mean, you're asking me about anti-Semitism when your question is Islamophobic. So the question that I would ask you is, okay, yeah, we can accept that ever since Zionism, there has been this importation of anti-Semitism. Not to say that there weren't any anti-Jewish ideas or thoughts before that, but largely this anti-Semitism is something modern and new due to the Zionist entity. But what about all of the Islamophobia and the anti-Arab sentiment amongst Jewish communities and especially amongst Zionists and amongst people like Destiny, who has called Arabs, religiously and culturally, socially prone to violence. They can't want, they just don't want peace. They just hungry for war. So what about all of this? Let's look at the polling data of Israel to see what they think of Palestinians and Arabs. They think crazy things about them. They want to expel. The majority of them still want to expel the Palestinians. And in fact, the Palestine Papers revealed that just very recently, in 2008, the Israeli state was trying to get forced transfer even still. And we're talking about Omer's offer. Let's talk about that as well. So
How is it that there are like 100 times more Arabs living in the single Jewish country of Israel than there are Jews living in every other Arab country in the world combined?
because it was an Arab majority country before Zionists came and they couldn't complete the job. And Ben Gurion said, damn it, I wish we did complete the job.
Wait, why couldn't they complete the job? They were trying to kick everybody else. You just gave me all those quotes about
because
transfer. Why did they
warrant-
kick all of
because
them
the-
out after 47, 48?
Because they actually tell you the logic. They tell you that unfortunately we can't do that now because of international pressure. And they thought these armistice agreements wouldn't be as lock solid as they were, and so they could no longer do it. But what they did do is they put that percentage of people that were left, no longer 45%, but now a manageable 10 to 15%. They put them under military rule. So for up until 1967, they were under 1966. They were under military rule, in which the military rule was used to impoverish them, to steal more land, to restrict them even more.
Well, they were under military rule because all the surrounding Arabs were trying to kill them, right? That was the whole issue. That was why. But number one, but number two, if they really planned out it was to expel all the Arabs the entire time, why would they have just expelled all of them? It's interesting that they didn't do that. Yeah.
So you're actually a proponent of crackpot realism, which is that you can so this is a scholarly term used for the idea that you can justify any endeavor using security. And the perfect example of this is your claim that they blocked cookies from Gaza because they were going to use those cookies for Qassam rockets. That's crackpot realism. Theoretically, who knows? Maybe they're in a lab and making Qassam rockets out of cookies. I mean, you can't completely say that it's not. But why we know that your claim is false is that Haaretz has released declassified documents which show that there were the Shin Bet actually had a plan to dispossess the Arab minority. And they specifically say it's not because they're a threat, because they weren't a threat. They were actually surprised at the fact that they were so docile. And they were so docile because they were a defeated community at that point in time. And they were also scared for their security. And so they said, actually, when we mean security, we actually mean demography. We mean we need a Jewish majority.
Wait, if you're telling me that the Shin Bet said that they wouldn't expel these people because it seemed like they didn't represent a threat, doesn't that just kind of further the idea that the people that were expelled were done because they thought that they were going to try to go to war with them, like the Palestinians did and all the surrounding Arabs did? How does that further that there was like a planned ethnic cleansing?
I didn't understand the question. Can you repeat what you said?
If Jews, the claim is planned Dalit was an ethnic cleansing. It had nothing to do with security, right? It's ethnic cleansing, right?
No, it's not. I didn't say. Did I say that?
That the goal was to get rid of the Arabs.
They specifically thought getting rid of the Arabs was a necessary thing for security.
That's not really an ethnic cleansing then.
Yes, it is. When the Hutus were wiping out the Tutsis, they thought they had to do that because of the security, because they thought that there were massacres on the other side. That's why your justification.
Let me just check. If there is a war between two sides, and as part of the war, one side is trying to kill the other, and when the other side fights back in areas where the side that's trying to kill them is present, and they expel those people from areas, you consider that ethnic cleansing? It's part of a war?
Do you think the Hutu Tutsis was that?
I'm not answering anything about the Tutsis, right? Okay, I'm curious. Would you consider that to be an ethnic cleansing?
It's not about what I consider. It's like there's no debate about this. Ethnic cleanse, even Benny Morris, like I said, doesn't disagree with this. He just says what Benny Morris says is yes, it was ethnic cleansing, but it was justified because of war. He doesn't deny that it's ethnic
I
cleansing.
think because he calls it a
Until later
transfer.
he
It's
did
not
when he
to-
became a propagandist.
Well, he did. Well, he did because it's a stupid term, because it's a nonsense term, right?
Well,
That
no, it's
everything that we don't like in
everything-
war is like a genocide and an ethnic cleansing and apartheid, because we have to use the biggest words possible, because if we do, well, they need the fact on the ground.
Wait,
like,
are you
it
gonna
looks horrible.
eat your words now about apartheid? You can't use apartheid because of it's an occupied territory. Are you gonna eat those words now?
What are we eating words for? I'm just
You
saying
made
it's
the
strange
point-
that
wait,
it's
no, no.
strange that
You
now you're giving me
made-
security justifications for why people
You
weren't
made-
expelled in 47, 48, when
you
that's the
made-
Zionist term, is that they expelled people because of security reasons. I thought it was just an ethnic cleansing because they hated Arabs.
Okay, so there was a committee created to deal with the Arab issue. This is what was released in the Haaretz paper, Haaretz articles. I can give you the link if you want. And they said that it's literally not about security in that sense. Our intent, quote, is to preserve Israel as a Jewish state. That is the central problem. When we say security, this is what's meant, not necessarily a revolution by the Arabs.
This is in
the
reference
Haaretz
to
article.
what? Yeah, in reference to what? At what time
The
period?
military, now it's always about the time period. You're going to say it's not the time period you're interested in. It's exactly after 1948 when they put them under military rule, which was the exact conversation that we were having. But now
Why do you
you're going
get
to say
so
it's
mad
something
when I
else.
ask for a year? Why does that upset
get
you
mad.
so
I'm not-
much?
I'm-
We're
I'm
talking
not
about
upset, my
history.
friend.
You understand that, like, the history, that the year is
So you,
important. I don't know why you get so
asked
upset
me-
about this.
You asked, I'm not upset. my
Yeah.
friend. When you, well, I mean, I don't like when people are genocide or ethnic cleansing, defenders. That's not something
Mhm.
that I like. I don't like people who go to trips to those countries. But in any case, the second point I wanted to ask you is specifically on the apartheid question. You have made it a huge thing that you've repeated numerous times that it can't be apartheid because it's occupation. Do you now eat those words? Because I just told you that in literally the protocols that they created, they made sure to include Namibia, which is occupied territory by South Africa, because they wanted to make sure to include that as well.
For what? I don't understand what we're talking about here. That Israel
Okay.
wanted to include Namibia, South Africa. What are we referring to in specifics here?
You have said in the past.
Don't
multiple
quote me. I'm
times-
right here. You don't have to quote me in the
well,
past. I'm right here.
no,
My
no,
position on this
I'm-
hasn't really changed. So what?
Yes. Well, no, I'm going to quote you because when I think you're really good at what you do, you're a professional BSer, but for a professional BSer, it's important to come with receipts. So I came with receipts today. Okay. Because I want to tie
You
you
should
down
have
to what
comprehensive
you said.
understanding next time instead of just like
Yeah.
random quotes
Yeah.
from books. Yeah, you should understand like the context
you're-
before and after.
Okay,
yeah.
you tell me, did I misrepresent your view? You said that it can't be apartheid because apartheid does not apply to an occupied territory. It only applied to, and you go like, citizens in your own country. Did you not say that? Isn't that your argument that you've been making?
I
for
would have to
months?
know the debate. No, the argument that I've been making is that apartheid is usually referring to a system of racial domination that applies to your citizens in your country. That's what makes apartheid
Yes,
like so
that's
uniquely horrible.
What did I
Yes.
just say? Didn't I just say that?
The racial domination part is important, and you're applying it to your own
I
citizens.
didn't say
Yes.
so now
People in
are
the
you
West
saying
Bank and Gaza aren't
that's
the
a-
citizens of Israel.
that's a separate
The situation is
argument about
kind of
race.
sort of like
no.
what?
That's a separate argument about race, and we can get to that. But the first point is that you hung your hat on the fact that it's occupied territory, and it's the occupation. You said I don't care about the apartheid because it's the occupation.
Sure, the
But
occupation is the reason for the. If you want to say there's apartheid conditions, they're not there because of an apartheid. They're there because of an occupation. The occupation has to be solved. When the occupation goes away, whatever apartheid we think exists also goes away. Yes.
So that's not true because, as Amnesty International has said, Israel overall, including within the Green Line, but overall is an apartheid state. There are
That's
50
fun. That's great for
So let's-
Amnesty International, but
there's-
that's a retard.
okay.
That's a joke of a statement.
no.
Okay.
What's a joke
Not
of
only
a
is it a
statement
joke
is
of a
somebody
statement,
who
even in
didn't
my
know where Palestine
conversations
is.
with Bet Salem, they admit as much that when they use apartheid, they just kind of like use it as like, well, the situation is bad.
They don't.
But to say that
nobody says
apartheid exists
There are literal
inside of the
scholars
country,
and
inside of the
historians-
country of Israel with Arabs and Jews is
There's
ridiculous.
literally scholars and historians who have written on this topic, and the book that I would give you is called South Africa and Israel. I have it here somewhere, which is by scholars. It's called Israel and South Africa. It's edited by your favorite scholar Ilan Pape, but it's multiple scholars who write on it. Who are
What is the
legal
give
historians.
me the strongest example of apartheid in Israel proper between Jews and Arabs? What do you think is the strongest example?
Even
of that?
Benny Morris has said the West
Benny
Bank.
Morris is not an example. That's not in.
Yeah, now all of a sudden Benny Morris doesn't matter. But before that,
on.
he was your best friend. But okay, so what I'm saying is
No, I just
the
said,
West
can you
Bank
give
is
me
the
an
strongest example of apartheid, but it applies overall as well because there are 50 discriminatory laws in Palestine, Israel proper. You thought that there's equality between Arabs
I'm asking
and
you.
Israelis and
I'm asking you.
Israelis.
What is the strongest example of apartheid in Israel proper?
In Israel proper? Easy.
Yes, there you
Okay.
go.
So number one, we can talk about land. There's a land regime, right? When you're talking about apartheid, you're talking about land, zoning, and houses, right? So there are zoning policies, a land regime where there was a confiscation. There was a huge confiscation post 1948 using the military rule to
We're not talking
dispossess
about,
the
but we're not
Palestinian.
talking about it now. We're talking about today. We're in the
So you're
last
talking
5
about
years. Right
so
now,
you don't
today.
think it's
We didn't say it was an
materially
apartheid in
relevant.
1948. We're talking about today, right now.
So
What is an
okay,
apartheid
fine,
in Israel
fine. So
proper?
no problem. I'm getting there. I'm going chronologically. Okay. So number one, they dispossessed the Palestinians over the course of 2 decades. I
Can
think
we
that's
do
2
it?
decades.
Okay,
Number two,
just as a heads
I'm
up, I have
getting
to leave
there.
at like 10:55. I got like
That's
3 or 4 minutes.
That's
Okay. You
okay.
can just say
That's
just today.
that's
What is the strongest example of apartheid today?
so zoning and segregation policies. Almost like 70%
Segregation
of
and
Jewish
zoning does
communities.
not, even if we were to accept that there is zoning, that's not
70
apartheid.
Dude, literally Israel has, yes, it is. If you have places where blacks can't go and only whites can live because they're not considered socially acceptable, that would be falling under the description of apartheid, right? It would be one point in the direction of apartheid. We're talking about Israel overall. It's a point in favor of saying that. Number two is you literally have a Israeli policy of Judaization. It's literally, they talk about it, that we're going to Judaize the various areas. And in order to do that, they actually cordon off the Bedouin tribes, and they actually push them off of their land further. So when Umar Badr said to you that it's ethnic cleansing in slow motion, and you laughed at that, that's what he was talking about. And you
No,
just were
I don't know.
you just were
I know
ignorant
that in
about that.
Israel proper, there are areas, I know that there are some protected areas that are supposed to represent certain religious groups of people, some for Muslims and some for Jews. But the idea that like Muslims are being pushed out of all their neighborhoods or pushed out of whatever, no, that's not true. But people are welcome to go and look this up. And none of what you said, whether or not there is some racism or segregation that exists in the country to some extent, which it does in every country, that does not make for apartheid. No.
Okay, this is what according to Ben White, who's written on this, more than 90% of the land in Israel is state-owned or controlled, a mechanism designed to keep land in Jewish hands. Officials are well aware of the advantages that bodies is apartheid in the West Bank, yes or no?
No, it's not really. But I mean, the
So
conditions are
so then
kind
why
of
are you
similar
making
there.
okay, all right. So well, your entire argument rested on the fact that it was occupied territory. So that falls apart. Now
I don't
your
think it
next
falls
argument,
apart. Do you agree that if the West Bank was its own state, do you think the apartheid would, if we say it was an apartheid, do you think it would still exist?
if the West Bank, I mean, then it would be, you'd have to reevaluate the situation. I'm not sure if it would meet the criteria of
Then
apartheid.
yeah, because the issue is that it's an occupied
The
territory,
question
not that
is,
it's an apartheid. Yeah.
no, that's not true. I just told you that that's not true because of Namibia, right? So Namibia was occupied by South Africa, and yet everybody said that that is apartheid.
I'm not talking about South
But
Africa. I
you
don't really
you
care
were
about
making the
South Africa.
comparison yourself to South Africa when you made this
I don't.
debate.
I'm not
When
making
you
a
made this point.
Holy shit,
And
James! Hi.
it's terrible audio, but we can hear you. 70% of all communities in Israel work through admission committees criteria that creates a filter for who can live there. And guess
You think
who is usually
70% of
excluded?
communities? So if I go to Tel Aviv, I'm not going to find any Arabs living anywhere. If I go to Jerusalem,
No,
I'm not
you're
going to
going
find
to find
Arabs
them in
living.
certain. Oh, you're telling me that you're not going to go to Israel and see Jewish only communities? Like you're not going to see
I
that?
didn't say you're not going to see Jewish only communities. There are certain communities that are religiously protected, but the whole country is not segregated off of
There's literally
strict
national
religious
priority
lines.
We have
areas
to
where
we
the
have to move to the
budget
next
is
one. I hate to
dedicated
do this,
to
guys.
Jewish only.
We just have a few more questions, and then I want to squeeze in if again. Corey Grice says, Dr. Hashmi, why do you say scholars do not go off of primary material sources and only go
I
by
didn't say that.
secondary sources?
That's a lie. I didn't say that. I said they go off both. If you do a PhD, the first thing that you learn is that the first step is to read the secondary literature, and then you approach the primary literature, which is the reverse of what lay people who search stuff on Wikipedia and look for Palestine on a map do.
Gotcha. This one, WLZXX says, Javad does not, does he think South Africa is a better country post-apartheid standard of living, crime, etc., has skyrocketed? Would apartheid be justified if it preserves the country? What about Islamic nations?
against standard whataboutery, which leans into stereotypes and bigotry. Now it's anti-Black bigotry and also anti-Islamic, anti-Arab bigotry. Yes, it's great to live in a white ethno-nationalist state for the whites. Nobody's going to deny that. That's why they wanted to preserve it in South Africa. That's why they want to preserve it in Israel, where it's a Europeanized community. Not all of them are white, but they're definitely all the culture is to Europeanize them and strip them of their non-European identities, such as what is
AAA,
happening with the Arab Jews.
AAA has a quote. They say Jews and Arabs can coexist. Look at African cities like Gia, Chad. And they say this is from Obama that said that. They say, why is Destiny opposed to one state solution? Does he support the We Ow Accords? Is he disappointed that ye always lose? And ye is YI.
The one, do I oppose a one-state solution? The issue with the one-state solution is that Jewish people feel like if they don't have a state where they have an ethnic majority, where they can protect the Jewish interests, they feel like they are subject to, I don't know, extermination, discrimination, whatever else from some other group of people, and they have no other place in the world that they feel safe that they can retreat to. So,
is that
I'm sympathetic towards that, given the history of the Jewish people on the planet. What?
Do you think that Israel is the only place where Jews are safe?
Where Jewish people can have that feeling. I'm sympathetic towards them feeling that.
In America, or more safe in America, or more safe in Israel?
More Jews probably feel like they have more autonomy and more ability to be safe in Israel. Would be my guess.
Really? Because we also get the paradox here, the Zionist paradox, where Israel is constantly under existential threat, and we're living under bomb scares and all this kind of thing, where our lives were about to be wiped out. And at the same time, you're supposed to say that Israel was created to make it a safe place for Jews. Actually, this is where Zionists have completely failed. Their entire ideology has failed. It emerged in the 19th century because they felt that Jews could not be assimilated or accepted anywhere else in the world. But that turned out to be false. In European countries, Western European countries, America especially, Jews have flourished and have a golden age. And that's what's actually we should support as liberals. We should support pluralism and civic nationalism, not ethno-nationalism, which is an idea like, for example, there were Black nationalists who also said that and said we should go back to Africa. And that's what happened with Liberia. You had Blacks who colonized other Blacks, and that was a disaster. And in fact, it turned out to be correct that Blacks and whites can live together, and they can live together. Arabs and Jews, we don't need Obama to tell us that Arabs and Jews can live together. We know that. The scholarship
Given that
shows
acceptance in the West slowly started to come, and only after literally the Holocaust, and given the idea that there were still plenty of anti-Jewish groups that existed in the United States, all the way up through Jim Crow, people like the KKK and other white nationalist groups, I can understand them feeling a little bit like, oh, I don't know if we really have stability in other countries.
Do you think Blacks should go back to Africa?
No, why?
Well, Zionism says Jews should go back to Israel. It's not that they can; it's that they almost must go back. That is their obligation.
I don't know what Blacks means. Zionists refer Black to like people. A particular.
We're comparing white nationalism or Black nationalism, white nationalism, Black nationalism with Zionism.
I don't think those things are. I don't think I would compare those two things directly.
So Black people, were they persecuted? Were they discriminated against heavily in American history? Were they persecuted?
I would say, yeah, slavery probably counts.
If we were living in Jim Crow era, and somebody says, "Oh, I think it's unrealistic that Blacks and whites could ever live together in one state with equal rights," that's just unrealistic. The white people just are not going to accept that. Look at the polling data. What would you say to that now?
What would I say to it now in retrospect? We'll keep fighting, I guess, because obviously now I have, with all the benefits of history, I can see that would have worked out.
So with the benefits of history, you can learn the fact that actually, if you have liberal democracy, and pluralism, you can have a multi-ethnic community, correct?
Well, where? Not everybody is the multi. I love you, and I'm so happy that you are in the West and you're in the United States, and you see that we can successfully do a multi-ethnic community. Not everybody has the same level of success that we do with that. And it's a relatively new thing. So that's cool that like in the 50s, 60s onwards that we've seen that, yeah, for the United States, it's generally worked so far, although it's still Jesus Christ, everything is still fucking up in the air. The idea that you would point to the United States and go, well, look at all of the multi-ethnic homogeneity in terms of us getting along with each other we have here, so shouldn't Jews be happy, right? That's an insane proposition. The United States is probably one of the most diverse countries in the world, and we still have issues with it. And the idea that you would look at Jews and go like, yeah, so just throw your lot in with us, it'll be fine, we promise. That's kind of a wild thing.
Do you think the Arabs and the Palestinians are the ones who said to come to
I hate Palestine? To say this. Let me just ask a question from the audience, Javad. I appreciate it. It's just that
they have a shared history coming from one spot, and they had a shared religion, and people all over the world.
imagine
This
me
question
moving
coming
to
in from, I
Africa
hate
and
to do this,
saying,
Javad,
there's
but
so many
just
black
because we have a
people
lot
here.
of
Oh my
questions from
God.
the audience, I do want to get some of these questions too. TriStar Jim says, "Hey Destiny, who returned the Jews back to Jerusalem after they were exiled for over 500 years by the Romans in the year
Who?
70? Who rescued the Jews from the Spanish Inquisitions?"
Take a guess, Destiny.
In the year? I have no fucking idea.
Yeah. Well, you're the history
Was it
expert.
Christians? I
Tell
don't know
us.
who. What? Who?
Oh, it was definitely not Christians. Okay.
Was
This
it
one
Arabs?
from
Muslims. Yeah, it
this
was
one from
Muslims.
Yeshua.
Oh, okay. How many of those Jews were forced to convert after the Arabs saved them?
They did not force to convert. You're the most ignorant person on the earth.
None of
if
them
you
were
think
forced.
there was
Oh, they just got to live as
Am I
dhimmi
saying-
status, where they
am I
had to
saying-
crawl on
do
their
you even-
knees past whenever there was where they weren't allowed to even
That
ride
was-
horses or camels or
let's
whatever.
talk-
Those
you-
are okay.
you-
Yeah,
you
those
wanna
such a
debate
great life
I
that they
hate
lived
to-
there.
I hate
You
to
want
do
to
this.
debate that? That was
We-
never enforced almost.
This one,
you can
never
read-
enforced
I do
on
want
under-
to.
Well,
So
it
read-
wasn't enforced in a lot
read
because a lot of them
under-
were just forced to convert or die. I mean, that's true too. Yeah,
Nobody.
so.
Okay, yeah. Where was the forced conversion? Tell me what. Give me
For the,
one
fir- the
example
first
of
few
mass
caliphates,
forced conversion.
these empires literally forced people when
False.
they took over their place. Oh,
False.
okay, my bad. Okay.
False.
This one
They actually
from
just took a tax and
Yeshua.
left them alone. They
Yeshua
in fact
the
didn't
King.
want Muslim converts. You don't know anything. You're ignorant.
Yeshua,
All right.
Yeshua the King says, "Thoughts on creating
I'm
a
an
whole
expert
new
on this
state?"
topic. You don't know what you're talking
And I think this is probably going to be our last question. I think they say, "Thoughts on creating a whole new state with a completely different name owned by a foreign government, or it will just be a never-ending back and forth."
It's a ridiculous statement. Arabs and Jews can live together just like any other two peoples on earth.
Arabs
There's a
and
lot of
Jews, true.
animosity. There's a lot of animosity between them.
And the Jews have
And,
shown us it's possible because the only time when both Arabs and Jews have been able to visit their holy sites, like the Temple Mount, has been when Jews have controlled it. So thank you,
That's
Jews, for showing us
completely-
that Arabs and Jews can live together, not as second class, not as dhimmi
Arabs-
citizens. You know, when
Arabs and Jews have
Haaretz or when
lived-
Bet
so
Salem
by the way,
or
dhimmi
when
status
Amnesty
was
International has to
already
do their
abolished
analysis
with the
on,
Ottoman
oh, well,
Empire.
is there an actual
Dhimmi
apartheid?
status-
They don't have to engage in 50 different
Dhimmi
discriminatory laws. In an
status
Arab state, they can
was
just say, oh,
already
dhimmi, they're
abolished.
actually literally second class
Okay,
citizens.
So I need to respond to that because this is a very last minute point that he's putting in. So the Ottoman Empire had already abolished dhimmi status and given full equal rights to Ottoman citizens, all of them, including Jews.
That's
so again, I
not
know that-
true. Part of
that is
the
100% true.
initial
It's called
land
the Tanzimat
purchases
reforms.
in the early
It was called the
1900s. That's great. That's great.
They
And in the
literally
early
said-
1900s, why did Jewish people have to lie and hide about the land they were buying?
Because they-
Because Jews weren't even
because
allowed to purchase
they-
Jews.
because the
Jews
Ottoman
weren't allowed to
Empire-
purchase land in some parts of the Ottoman
No,
Empire.
The Ottoman Empire said you can settle anywhere that you want, but don't just settle in Palestine and try to make your state there. That's the reason. So they said you're welcome as Ottoman citizens anywhere, but we don't want you to create another state. I wonder why they would say that.
No, it wasn't about
Just
creating
like-
another state. It was to
Yeah,
sell
yeah,
to
you
all
are.
Jewish
You're
people
wrong.
was banned in the
And-
Ottoman
okay,
Empire.
so-
I think
so,
like 18.
wait, the second point I want to make is not only was there constitutional
Um,
reforms in Ottoman,
it's I think
Ottoman
you just
era,
do a really
there was also
pithy
the
one,
Syrian
Javad.
Constitution of 1920, which extended equal rights and disestablished Islam, by the way, and said we want a secular liberal democracy. There's a great book on it by a scholar called How the West Stole Democracy in the Middle East that you should read on that. I have it here.
This one coming in from, I hate to do this, but sorry, folks. If you happen to ask a question, I do want to get the guys out of here on time. Destiny said, and I know it is late, so I don't blame. It's already 11 p.m. over there. Folks, shoot me an email at moderndebate@gmail.com. Sorry about that if your question was not read. moderndebate@gmail.com. And folks, want to let you know I have just pinned it in the live chat. Tomorrow, Destiny versus Tiger King. This is no joke. It's happening. That's pinned in the live chat. You don't want to miss it. I want to say a huge thank you to our guests. They're linked in the description. Folks, huge. Check out their own primary, you could say, sources. They're straight from the horse's mouth. Even if you disagree, at least you know what you're disagreeing with by checking out their content. So with that, I want to say thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll let you guys go
Thank
for the
you.
night.
And thank you, Destiny. I
Thank you very much
appreciate
for the conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. And folks, stick around. We'll be back in just a moment. And want to say, folks, thanks so much for all your support. It's been amazing. Let me just move this around really quick. James Small. There we go. Oh, man. Fair enough. Okay. No. But want to say, folks, let me know how my audio is, by the way. I don't know if this microphone is really doing what I'm hoping it would be doing. It's, from what I've heard, it's kind of not great right now. So I want to say, though, thanks for being here, guys. Seriously, you make this fun. And want to say the guests, the guests make this show amazing. So we do want to say a huge thank you to Destiny and Javad. And it is not a joke. Tomorrow, Tiger King from the hit series on Netflix, Tiger King, will be with us. Joe Exotic, in other words. Let me know if you can hear. Actually, I'm gonna listen to this right now. Yeah, again. My audio is fine. Nice try, Aaron. or Aaron, but want to say we're really excited about it. Tomorrow, Tiger King and Destiny. It's going to be amazing. So this is for real. We did reach out. Is I basically said, "Hey, Tiger King, I know that you just threw your support behind Trump, and I said you want to debate Destiny, and so set your expectations low. The reason is we only have 15 minutes. It's a mini debate. It's a micro debate. It's only 15 minutes, and the audio is going to be at best like what you're hearing right now. It's not going to be pretty. The reason is we usually use Zoom, as you can actually see. Like right now, you can see over here, that's part of the Zoom window that you're seeing. Tomorrow, we are actually going to be using Zoom with a telephone connecting because Tiger King is calling or connecting from somewhere where you can only use a telephone. So I do want to mention that. And then for watching, I see there in the live chat, very disgruntled. I already told you my email is moderndaydebate@gmail.com. Although I wouldn't recommend starting your email in all caps like that. So I want to say we are excited as tomorrow is going to be the first time. I've wanted this for years. Back in, I'm not joking, I think it was 2020. So it's like 4 years ago now. I wrote a letter to Tiger King basically saying, "Hey, we'd love to have you on the show." And he said, "I can't do it now, but thanks." And I was, I kept the letter. I've got the letter, so that's very exciting. But now we're finally having him on the show. It's only 15 minutes. It's going to be through the phone, so the audio is going to be not ideal, but it's just as good as we can get it. I have drilled and practiced and done so much to try to make sure that this audio will go seamlessly. It's gotten to the point where it's like, hey, this is just as good as we're going to be able to do. So set your expectations low in terms of the audio quality, but the debate quality, I'm very excited about. It's going to be a lot of fun. XXWLZ XX. Thanks for your membership support of Modern Day Debate. Seriously, really appreciate that. And thanks for your super chat. Says, can't believe that's happening, James. You're awesome. Keep up the great work. LOL. Thanks for your kind words. I can't believe it either. I'm like, wow, this is really, really cool. Oftentimes when we get like a really big debate set up, this has got to be like one of probably the most known names that we've ever hosted. Like, I mean, we've had like people with like over 1 million subs, like Sargon and stuff. At one point, he had over 1 million, I think. Uh, but we've never had somebody that was like a Netflix star and phenom during the COVID, uh, the COVID time. So I shouldn't have said that. I think we'll be all right. But long story short, it's going to be huge. So we're excited. We want to say thank you guys for all your support. My email is moderndaydebate@gmail.com. And oh yeah. I want to say hi to more people in live chat though. And I want to say thanks so much for your support. If you're a channel member, seriously, we appreciate that. Peter, thanks for being a channel member. Says, how about super chats? So we did not get to ask all the questions to the guests that I think I mentioned this already, but I'll say it again. So listen, we didn't get all the questions in time because the guests had to take off. It's 3 hours, so we're just grateful to have them here even for an hour, half hour. So let's see. Sunshine J says, did he finish his PhD? Yes, I am done with my PhD. I'm really excited about that. You have no idea how much my life is just awesome to not have that on my shoulders anymore. I defended my dissertation in May, and then I had to go through all the paperwork over the summer to where the diploma should be in the mail. So I'm excited. I'm probably going to celebrate that with the channel and actually, put that like out on the YouTube community tab. Sir Buggy Goiberger, good to see you. Says thanks, James. Thank you. Even Lord, thanks for being a channel member. And Jupiter Darman, thanks for being a channel member as well. Got a lot of channel members here. Thank you guys for your support. Let's see here. Oh yeah, but then yeah, if you send a super chat in and it's like just an insult toward one of the guests, well, I mean, then you're kind of you're not paddling with both oars in the water. Obviously, we're not going to read something that if it's funny, it's like funny and lighthearted. I'm not going to read something that's just mean and funny. It's got to be like something like light and fun. Then we can do it. But yeah, if you're just like trashing a guest, we're not going to read it. So I think you guys already know that, hopefully. We do appreciate our guests. Like 99.9% of the time, guests are just doing it because they love it. Like they just love debating. And they're like, hey, this is fun. And so we're just like, hey, we're just grateful to have them. And Agent Black in the old live chat says, oh, amazing. Glad to have you. Stephen Lax, thanks for coming by. Joey Rock, happy to have you here. Sunflower, thanks for your channel membership. Thanks for being with us. And Dalathon, thanks for coming by. Says, very bad, Mike. Yeah, right. You wish. Kibbles, thanks for your kind words. Thanks for being here. Fear, glad to have you. Zane, happy to have you. Will says, amazing. And somebody, thanks for coming by. I see you there in the old live chat, as well as, if I'm saying this right, Sabra Chadabro, thanks for being here. AR Ibrahim, thanks for coming by. Glad that you are with us. And thanks for being here, Joe. Stoked to have you here. A blind man, thanks for coming by. AC, happy to have you, as well as Right of the Twin Lamps, thanks for coming by. And Rivers, thanks for dropping in. Let's see here. Dalathon, glad to have you here. And Zane, thanks for coming by. AC, happy to have you here. It's pretty late. I should actually go. I should get some sleep because I actually have to get up in the morning. I forgot about that. Light of the Twin Lamps says, how much can you bench press, James? I used to be able to bench press. I'm not trying to brag, but I actually used to be able to bench press a pretty good amount. My highest ever, my peak was 370 was what I maxed out at when I was in college. I played college football at Duluth, Minnesota, and yeah, it was my peak was 370. So it was a pretty good bench, especially for a guy with like really long arms like me. Pretty long arms. I don't really have a barrel chest. I have like so much distance to go in terms of like bench press compared to some dudes that are just built for it. But yeah. Ratty Random, thanks for coming by. Let's see. It said, yeah, I try to keep my own thoughts. I haven't really read on this today's issue. It's such a weighty, heavy issue that I feel like I want to read a pretty good amount to be able to say like. So I don't really want to say like which way I lean, especially when it's like, well, I lean just based on what I've heard. Um, and I got to be honest, there's a ton of uncertainty in me where I'm like, I don't know what to, how to get to the bottom of this. I'm not just being political. Like it is just a really tough topic where I'm like, well, it seems like there are probably some jerks on both sides, to put it nicely. And then there's some good people, a lot of good people on both sides. And there's like, I think probably some bad actors on both sides that make it worse. I just don't know enough about it to have an opinion, that would be educated at least. Um, let's see here. My sister's keeper, thank you for coming by. Says James, what did you think of the show Sabrina the Teenage Witch? It was okay. I used to love TGI Friday. I think that was what it was. TGIF. I used to love that on Friday nights where they would show you all these shows where it was like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Boy Meets World. It was amazing. But what happened was I didn't really I kind of liked Sabrina. I'd watch it when I was like, well, because you only got 4 shows. And it's oftentimes it was Sabrina, and then, it was like 2 others, and then Boy Meets World. And I would just kind of like, yeah, it was like maybe the first one that was on at 7, so I'd just watch it because it's kind of part of the whole TGIF. But nah, I don't know. It's kind of a girl. I know I feel like it's kind of a girl show. You'd relate to it more if you were a girl, right? Like I'm not really like wanting to be a witch. Um, and they're all girls in the show except the cat. I don't really identify as a cat. So I don't really feel like I fit, but I'm pretty tired. And I want to say thank you guys for your kind words. Agent Black, good to see you. Thanks for your kind words in the live chat. And Human Girl, one of our longest viewers since I don't know it's been almost 6 years. So I'm excited that this fall we are going to release some mega cuts. We'll have like the top 5 Mike Jones debates, top 5 Destiny debates, top 5 Matt Doherty debates, top 5 Aaron Raw debates, David Wood, etc. And those would be like mini commentary tied in at the front where I'm basically just saying like what I liked most about that particular debate. So I'm really excited about that. And yeah, so it's gonna be cool. And we're gonna release those. But yeah, it's fun for me to just say, hey, I remember we did this debate and it was at this location. Like I remember when we did one couple, it was like a traveling set. And one was with Destiny and Bosch in Los Angeles. We used Destiny's data to stream the entire thing. Uh, Pretty based. But yeah, so that'll be our 6-year celebration to release those super cuts. And they'll be like 11 hours long. They're going to be super long. So, but thanks for your guys' support. Seriously, this is really fun for me. I appreciate it. It means more than you know. Uh, Livers, am I saying it right? Says, get Jake the Muslim metaphysician on this channel. We have before, and we'd like to again. I like him a lot. The funny thing is, like, we at first, like on Twitter, we had like kind of nearly had a spat, and then we got along when we actually met, and even before we uh got to meet. And he's cool. I like Jake a lot. So he's one of my favorite peeps in terms of just being a relatable, cool guy. So now, as I mentioned, tomorrow, let me just chop this up really quick. I'm going to shrink my little video here. As you can see at the bottom right, it's no joke. See my finger pointing that in that direction. There it is. Okay. He's, as you can see at the bottom right of your screen, tomorrow at 4 p.m. Okay, thanks for your patience. I want to encourage you. Pinned at the top of the chat is Destiny versus Tiger King. That debate is tomorrow. I'm about to end the stream. So if you would, I appreciate your support. If you want to do a genuine favor for modern day debate and get us like some help contribute to the epic hype about tomorrow's mini debate, if you could click on that link, you can even do it right now and I'll wait for you and I'll say thank you if you mention in the live chat that you did it. Is that if you go and click on that link, Destiny versus Tiger King, that I've pinned to the top of the chat, and if you're willing to hit like on that event page, I would be super grateful. So thank you guys for your support. I'm excited though. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm pumped. I'm like, hey, like who knows? Like this might do really well. So I'm intrigued to see like how well it will do. But yeah. So if we have 800, we have 786 people watching. Uh, we're at 64 likes for the Destiny versus Tiger King page. I'd be super grateful. Could we get to 100? And then we could send, Human Girl in the live chat. She said she would send feet pics to everybody's email if we can just get to 100 likes on that event page. But I want to say, for real, thanks for your guys' support. Max M, thanks for being a channel member. Appreciate that. And then, but yeah, thank you guys for all of your guys' support. And want to just say we appreciate you. And it's always a blast. Human Girl says I'll have to click on it to like it. Oh yeah, yeah. Just come right back. Go if you're willing to go over and like it. I'll stay. I'll wait for you for real. So we do appreciate that support. And let's see here. Human Girl, do it. Come on, for real. Agent Black, thanks for your kind words. Seriously. says I liked the video. Thank you for that. Succulent Succubus says I hit the button. Thank you for your support. Seriously. Um, and Alexander Howlett says 2 people watching on Twitch. Wow. But thanks for watching on Twitch. And let's see. Agent Black says send those feet pics. But yeah, my sister's keeper says James, you need to have a debate on AI and the ethics and morals of AI. AI is getting very popular. I'm open to that. It's just I don't know if it would really engage our top like our audience. If it was like major names that were doing it, I think it could work. But yeah. Stop Technocracy, glad to see you here. And Sam Sommer says, how are things going, James? You sound tired. I am tired. I gotta go. It's getting late. I really should. But Sommer, thanks for coming by. I'm doing well though. I'm done with a PhD. I'm very excited about that. Thanks for asking, bro. How are you? Human Girl says I did it. Thanks so much, Human Girl. You're not so bad after all. And but yeah, I'm excited. Thank you guys. We're at 73 likes on the Destiny versus Tiger King watch page for tomorrow. That's still pinned at the live chat, at the top of the live chat. So thank you guys for your support. Zeke's good to see you there in the old live chat, as well as Alexander Howlett. Thanks for coming by. Max M says, thank you, Dr. James. Thank you. And then Alexander Howlett says, you got it. Thanks, Alexander. And Succulent Succubus wants those feet pics. Let's see. Yeah. Board Gators actually answer questions. They both did it tonight. I get where you're coming from. I get where you're coming from. It probably could be done more in a way that is satisfactory to the channel. I have to be careful about how much I do it, and I'm sure you understand why, because the biggest thing is I'm like, um, maybe you don't understand. My guess is you do, but I'll explain it just in case, is that ideally, and oftentimes the other debater does point it out, judging. But yeah, like it just kind of sets up where it's like, let's say one debater does do that and they do a good job of pointing it out to the audience, but the other debater doesn't. And so like it's kind of like, okay, so if I do it, it almost looks like I'm helping the one debater, the one side, because this guy just doesn't know that he's supposed to call out the other debater for dodging. So it can easily, we're always trying to be like super neutral. Um, and so I get what you mean. I'm open to that, but yeah. Goodbye, human girl. Thanks for your support. Says bye, awesome chat peeps. Goodbye. Thanks for your support. Appreciate you. And yeah, I'll let you guys go. I hope you get some quality rest. Thanks for all your support. Alexander Howlett, you're the man. Thanks for your kind words. And we'll see you at the next one. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. And we're excited for tomorrow's debate. Soaked. Thanks, guys. See you then.